Deep inside the Silver Dragon dungeon, the air felt heavy with tension. The guards bowed as the Silver Dragon Queen, Regina Silverstone, entered the room. Her presence alone commanded respect. With a quick wave of her hand, she dismissed the guards. "Leave us," she ordered, her voice echoing against the cold stone walls. "I want to speak with him alone." "Yes, your majesty," the guards responded together before rushing out. The heavy door closed behind them with a loud thud. Regina turned her cold gaze toward her prisoner, John Miller. Once a great hero who had slain countless dragons, he now sat bound in chains, beaten and bloodied but still unbroken. His name had been legendary until his fall. Now he was a prisoner of the very dragon clan he had sworn to destroy. "So, great dragon, slaying hero," Regina began, a cruel smile pulling at the corner of her lips. "How does it feel to be the prisoner of the Silver Dragon clan?" John's head lifted, and his eyes, full of defiance, met hers. Even though pain was clear on his face, he spat. "Just kill me," his voice hoarse from days of suffering. Regina chuckled softly, stepping closer to him. "Oh, you want a quick death? I'm afraid it's not that simple, John." She leaned in, her piercing silver eyes locking with his. "You're a handsome man, strong and determined. Perhaps a few more scars would make you even more striking." "Stop mocking me," John growled, his voice full of frustration. "Kill me or cut me into pieces. Just get it over with." Regina straightened, her amusement fading slightly. "You're a powerful man. If it hadn't been for the betrayal of your so-called allies, you wouldn't be in this sorry state. I wonder, why not join us? The Silver Dragon clan could use someone like you." John let out a harsh laugh, then coughed. "Join you? You think you deserve my loyalty." His body trembled, but his spirit remained strong. Regina's expression darkened. "How dare you? A prisoner. Speak to me like that." She stepped closer, her anger simmering beneath the surface. "Do you still believe you're the great hero of mankind? That people praise you, dream of your legacy? You're delusional. You're going to die here. Forgone to die here. Forgotten and alone." She began circling him, her voice lowering to a more sinister tone. "Maybe if you had played your cards right, you could have lived long enough to give your descendants wealth and glory. But now there will be no legacy for you. Your bloodline ends with you." John's eyes flared as he struggled to sit upright. "Regina, don't underestimate humans." Regina paused, surprised by the fire in his voice. "Stubborn to the end, aren't you?" John winced as another wave of pain crashed through his body, but he forced himself to stay upright. His breathing was labored, but he managed to speak. "You managed to speak. You made 2 mistakes, Regina." Her frown deepened as her curiosity was piqued. "What mistakes?" John's voice dropped to a whisper. "First, you shouldn't have been alone with the most powerful dragon slayer ever trained. And second," with a sudden burst of energy, John jerked his head forward, "you should never have tasted my blood." Regina's body froze, and a strange heat began to spread through her veins. What's happening?" she gasped. John's lips curled into a grim smile. "Soon you will feel pain like you've never known. Pain that will last for the rest of your life." Regina stumbled back, clutching her chest. "What have you done to me?" she demanded. John's voice was weak, but his words were clear. "A blood curse. A forbidden spell. It can only be used once in a lifetime. You tasted my blood, and now we're bound. When I die, you will live in endless agony." Regina snarled. "If the spell only works after you die, then why is this happening now?" John's smile remained grim. "I didn't expect this side effect, but it seems my blood has some surprises. You're feeling the effects of our bond." "Shut up!" Regina snapped, her mind racing. She had underestimated him. She, the great Silver Dragon Queen, had let her guard down, and now she was paying the price. "So far as I know," John continued, his voice mocking, "dragons follow the rule of monogamy, don't they? After I die, you won't be able to find another mate. You won't be able to find another mate. You won't be able to have children or explain to your clan why their queen is cursed." Regina's face twisted in fury. You heard me," John said, his voice barely a whisper now. "Neither will you. There will be no dragon heirs." "You bastard," Regina hissed, her body shaking with rage. "Do you want me to kill you?" John's eyes softened as the weight of his sacrifice settled over him. "You won't have to. I'll die soon enough, he paused, his voice turning final. But you'll live with hatred for me, with pain that will never end. That's my curse to you as a human. Regina's chest tightened. She, a mighty queen, was being brought low by a mere human, a man she believed to be beneath her. You're just a human, she growled, her voice trembling. And yet you take revenge in such a despicable way. You want to die? You think it's that easy? Her voice rose to a scream. How can it be so simple? How can it end like this? Memories. Memories. Suddenly, Leon awoke with a sharp gasp. His heart pounding in his chest, he struggled to make sense of his surroundings. The cold stone walls, the heavy air, none of it felt real. Hey, you're awake! A small, cheerful voice interrupted his confusion. Leon blinked, trying to focus on the figure standing in front of him. A little girl stood there, smiling up at him. So cute, she exclaimed. What's going on? Where am I? Leon muttered, his voice cracking from disuse. The girl giggled. You're funny. Do you think this is heaven? Leon frowned, still trying to understand what was happening. Heaven, have I finally earned my place here because of my great contributions to mankind? He looked at her, confused. And you must be an angel. The girl tilted her head, her black and white hair catching the dim light of the dungeon. What's an angel? Leon chuckled weakly. An angel, huh? What's your name, little angel? Moon, she said proudly. Mom says my hair means moon. Leon's mind swirled with questions as he tried to shake the fog from his thoughts. My name's Leon. I know, Mun chirped. Mom says Leon means lion. For the first time in ages, Leon felt a flicker of warmth at their innocent exchange. Who's your mother? Ross Weiss, Mun said, beaming. Leon's blood ran cold. Ross Weiss. The Silver Dragon Queen. Your mother is Ross Weiss, he stammered. Yep, and you're my dad, Mun grinned, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Leon's heart stopped, his mind spinning as he tried to process the words. Dad. This child was his, Ross Weiss's child, his child. Before he could say another word, Mun ran to the doorway, yelling excitedly. Dad's awake! The door creaked open, and there she stood, Ross Weiss, the Silver Dragon Queen herself. Her gaze was sharp, but there was an undeniable look of satisfaction in her eyes. I know, Mun, she said softly. Your father's finally awake. Leon swallowed hard, his throat dry. Is she really my daughter? Ross's lips curled into a smirk. What do you think? Of course she's our daughter, our biological daughter. A storm of emotions raged within Leon. He could barely look at Ross Weiss without feeling a deep mixture of hatred and disbelief. You hate me, he whispered, his voice raw. Why would you give birth to this child? Why did you save me? Ross's smile faded, replaced by something colder. You've been asleep for 2 years, Leon. Did you think I would just let it go after everything you did? Leon's brow furrowed. You're different. We're enemies. We can't coexist. If this were any other time, you wouldn't even come near me. Her gaze darkened. Touching you was torture, she spat. Leon's stomach twisted. What are you planning now? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Without a word, Ross Weiss stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. She reached out, her sharp nails grazing his skin. I want to carve my dragon mark on you, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Stop it, Ross Weiss, Leon growled, trying to pull away despite the chains. It will be your shame, not mine. It'll mean that, from now on, I'm your prisoner. Ross Weiss chuckled darkly. Think the humans will welcome their great dragon-slaying hero back with open arms when they see a dragon tattoo on your body? Will they believe you're still a hero, or will they think you're a traitor who surrendered to the dragon clan? Leon's breath caught in his throat. Why? Why are you doing this? Ross's expression hardened, her voice dropping to a whisper. Don't you understand, Leon? This is revenge. Her words hit like a dagger to the heart, she continued, her voice dripping with malice. The Dragon Clan's sense of revenge is something your human scholars will never understand. It's more than personal. It's all-consuming, obsessive. Leon clenched his fists, his body trembling with fury. So this is what it's about. Humiliating me? Ross's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. You will live in shame, Leon. The great hero of the Empire brought low by the Silver Dragon Queen herself. I'll make sure your name is remembered. Not as a legend, but as a legend, but as a legend, but but as a disgrace. This is your fate, Leon. To be humiliated for the rest of your life. Leon's heart ached, not just for himself, but for the man he had once been, the hero who had fought for humanity, the people who had once believed in him. Now chained and broken, his future seemed to belong to the dragons, or more specifically to Ross Wyss. For the Silver Dragon Queen, Leon's fall wasn't just a victory for the Dragon Clan. It was personal. He wasn't just her prisoner. He was her revenge, her proof of dominance. He had become her most intimate enemy. Now, bound by blood and shame, Leon Carson, the greatest dragon, slaying hero in human history, was hers. In the towering halls of the Silver Dragon Castle, whispers floated like smoke. Servants exchanged knowing glances, their voices low and cautious. "The queen seems to be in a good mood today," one murmured. "You don't know, do you?" another replied. Her husband woke up. The Dragon Slayer. Leon winced at the title husband. Ross Wyss had publicly claimed him as her consort. To the castle's inhabitants, it was an indisputable fact. To Leon, it was nothing less than a nightmare. Inside his mind, he scoffed. A husband, her prisoner is more like it. He still couldn't believe how he had ended up in this situation, bound to the very creature he had been sworn to destroy. But worse yet, her public claim of him as a consort felt like another chain tightening around his soul. He clenched his fists. "I, Leon Carson, will not stay here and become her plaything. I will escape." After hours of careful planning and observation, Leon noticed something odd about the castle that day. There were fewer guards than usual. The quiet was unsettling. But why so quiet, he thought, making his way through the halls, careful to avoid the occasional sentry. As he slipped toward the side door, he noticed something unusual, a hole in the castle wall. It almost seemed too convenient. "A trap," he muttered, hesitating only for a moment. Crouching down, Leon squeezed through the gap. His heart raced as he muttered under his breath, "Goodbye, perverted dragon queen. Mun, as much as you're an innocent kid, you can only be hers for now." Just as Leon thought he was in the clear, a small voice made him freeze. "Mom, look, Dad's digging a dog hole. How cool." Leon's blood ran cold. Mun. He glanced back but didn't stop. He moved faster, his pulse thundering in his ears. He couldn't afford to slow down. Not now. A deeper voice followed, one that made Leon's stomach drop. "Yeah, I see it," Ross Wyss said, her tone laced with amusement. Mun's curious voice chimed in. "When will you catch him, Mom?" "Soon," Ross Wyss answered, her voice smooth and almost amused. "Very soon." Leon pushed harder, his muscles burning as he sprinted through the dense forest surrounding the castle. The mountains loomed ahead. "Once I'm over these mountains, I'll be in human territory. Freedom." But freedom was a cruel illusion. Leon hadn't made it more than a few miles when a familiar voice echoed through the trees, sending a chill down his spine. "Ross Wyss," he spat, spinning around to face her. She hovered effortlessly above him, her wings casting a long shadow over the forest floor. "You really are quite the runner, Leon," she teased, her silver eyes gleaming with amusement. Leon's heart pounded in his chest. Damn it, it wasn't supposed to end this way. "Is it fun for you playing with me like this?" he growled. "Oh, yes," Ross Wyss purred, descending lazily to the ground, her wings folding elegantly behind her. "It's very satisfying. But tell me, didn't you think this was too easy? Who do you think helped you escape, diverted the guards, and left that little hole for you?" Leon's mind raced. Of course. It had been a setup. Deep down, he had known all along. It was too convenient, too perfectly timed. But still, even knowing that, Ross tilted her head, a smirk playing on her lips as she stepped closer. "You have my mark, Leon. What do you think your people will do when they see it? Do you really think they'll welcome you back as their hero?" Leon's chest tightened. The dragon mark Ross Wyss had carved into his skin wasn't just a symbol. It was a curse, a brand of shame that would forever tie him to her. "Your people will see it, Leon," she continued, her voice soft but deadly. "They'll know. And when they do, they'll see you not as a hero, but as a traitor. You'll never escape me. Not in their eyes, and not in your own." Leon's throat felt tight, his breath shallow. Ross Wyss had won. Stripped of everything. His freedom, his reputation, even his future. Leon felt branded as hers in body, mind, and spirit. "Then I'll live as an ordinary person," Leon spat, his voice steady but defiant. Anything is better than being tortured by you. Ross Weiss's eyes darkened, her lips curling into a predatory smile. You really don't know how to appreciate my kindness, do you? Leon's instinct screamed at him to run, but before he could act, Ross Weiss was on him in an instant, her grip firm and unyielding. "Let me go!" Leon shouted, struggling with all his strength, but it was useless. "If you want to go back so much," she whispered into his ear, her breath hot against his skin, "I'll help you." 3 hours later, Leon found himself hurled onto the outskirts of a human town. The hard ground knocked the wind from his lungs, and he groaned in pain. Looking up, he saw the familiar sight of the Empire's towering walls. So close, too close. Ross Weiss stood over him, her gaze icy. "There it is, Leon. A human empire. Do you feel like you could just step over the line and return to your people?" Leon glared at her, his anger burning in his chest. He could practically taste freedom, but she was right. He couldn't go back. Not now. Not with the dragon mark seared into his skin, a constant reminder of her control over him. Ross Weiss chuckled softly, kneeling beside him, her voice almost playful. "Oh, I forgot to mention. The dragon mark has a special feature. When one of us wants to get closer," her lips curled into a wicked smile, "the mark produces a reaction." Leon's eyes widened in shock as a burning heat began to surge through his veins. His body, against his will, started to respond to the magic of the mark. His breathing grew heavier, his skin flushed with the intensity of the sensation. You planned this?" Leon gritted out, fighting to stay composed. "Of course," Ross Weiss whispered, her hand trailing slowly over his chest, each touch taunting. "I wanted you to feel true shame, right here, so close to home, where you could almost touch the life you once had." Leon's fists clenched tightly, his nails digging into his palms. "I'll never lose faith," he growled, his voice thick with resolve. "I'll wait, and when the time comes, I'll make you pay for everything you've done." Ross Weiss's smile grew colder, but a flicker of amusement danced in her eyes. "We'll see, Leon. We'll see." Standing tall over him, her silver eyes gleaming with satisfaction, Ross Weiss leaned in close. Her breath was icy against his skin, sending chills down his spine. "Oh, Leon, I'll be waiting, dead or alive," she whispered before turning and vanishing into the sky. Leon lay on the cold ground, staring up at the stars. So close to home, yet farther than ever from freedom. "One day, Ross Weiss, one day, I'll be free," he muttered under his breath, his fist clenched tight. "And when I am, I'll make sure you regret ever crossing me." Near the Empire's border, Leon Carson stumbled forward, each step heavier than the last. His chest heaved with exhaustion, his body on the verge of collapse. Yet the Silver Dragon Queen glided effortlessly beside him, her wings barely stirring the air. "I'm very satisfied with your performance just now," Ross Weiss mused, her voice dripping with amusement. "How about I bring you here every month to visit your hometown?" Leon shot her a glare, gritting his teeth. "You're just a dragon with your head in the clouds, thinking about how you're going to drain me." Ross Weiss chuckled softly. At the mention of Mun, Leon stiffened. He may have been her prisoner, but he was still a dragon slayer. The thought of being led back like some kind of captured prey gnawed at his pride. "I'll walk back myself," he barked, refusing to be dragged like a helpless animal. Ross Weiss raised an eyebrow, her wings fluttering lazily. "From here to the Silver Dragon Castle, it takes me 3 hours to fly. But for a human, that's 10 days, maybe more." "It's just 10 days, Leon snapped, his jaw set in defiance. "Don't underestimate human endurance." She smirked, clearly amused by his stubbornness. "Fine, let's see how long you can last." Several hours passed, and the forest stretched endlessly before him. A sea of shadows and dense trees. Leon's legs wobbled under the strain, his breath ragged, muscles burning with each step. "I can't stop, not in front of her," he told himself. But the pain was relentless. "Can't walk anymore," Ross Weiss teased, her voice laced with amusement. "Still not tired," Leon shot back, refusing to admit his weakness. "The only thing tough about you is your mouth, Leon." Before he could retort, something caught his eye, a group of soldiers marching through the trees. His heart leapt with sudden hope. The Dragon Slayer army, Leon's mind raced. Maybe they can help me. Maybe they can take her down. But just as quickly, a chilling thought struck him. "No." A soldier called out, noticing them. "Are you two lost?" Ross Weiss's expression remained calm, serene. Leon's heart pounded in his chest. "I can't let them get involved. They don't stand a chance." The soldier tilted his head, concern creeping into his voice. This forest isn't safe. There are dangerous species lurking around. How about I take you for a ride? He extended his hand, smiling. By the way, my name's Walker. I'm the captain of the 47th Squadron of the Imperial Dragon Slayer Army. Leon's stomach twisted. If only he knew. He forced a polite smile, shaking his head. Thank you for your kindness, but we've had some self-defense training. We can protect ourselves. Walker narrowed his eyes, studying Leon's face. You look familiar. Have we met before? Panic surged through Leon. His heart raced as he scrambled for an excuse. Sir, you must have mistaken me for someone else. I have one of those faces, he said quickly. Even my wife misrecognizes me sometimes, right, honey? He turned to Ross Weiss, giving her a pleading look. Ross Weiss leaned in, her breath hot against his skin. I'll go back with you obediently. Just get rid of them first, she murmured, her voice carrying a quiet threat. Leon swallowed hard and nodded slightly before addressing Walker again. Sorry, Captain. We don't want to trouble you. We'll be fine on our own. Walker raised an eyebrow but chuckled good-naturedly. All right then. I won't disturb your quality time, he said with a knowing grin before gesturing to his men to continue on. Once they were out of earshot, Ross Weiss pulled away, her lips curling into a mocking smile. You were smart not to ask for help, she said, her voice low. But let me remind you of something. Just because we have a child together doesn't mean I'm your wife. Leon scowled, brushing off her words. Trust me, I never thought of being your husband. Good, she replied with a smirk. Still a long way back. Before he could take another step, Leon's body gave out. His legs buckled beneath him, and he collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Ross Weiss stared down at him, shaking her head. What a fragile human being, she muttered. There was a hint of something softer in her tone. With a soft sigh, she lifted him effortlessly, her wings spreading as she took off into the sky, carrying him back to the castle that bound them both. The forest below grew smaller, and soon the Empire's border faded into a distant memory. Leon blinked his eyes open, his body aching as if he had just fought a battle. His heart sank when he recognized his surroundings, the castle he had been trying to escape for so long. Groaning, he rubbed his temples, the weight of his defeat pressing down on him. Dad, you're awake, a cheerful voice snapped him out of his thoughts. Leon turned to see Mun, his daughter, half human, half dragon, standing beside his bed, her face bright with excitement. Oh, how did I get back here? He mumbled, trying to gather his thoughts. Mun clapped her hands proudly. Mom brought you back, Dad. She flew you all the way here, she announced as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Leon's heart sank further. Damn it, she really caught me this time. His eyes darted toward the doorway, knowing Ross Weiss would soon appear. She always did, ready to remind him of his place. As if summoned by his thoughts, she strolled into the room, her usual air of dominance filling the space. A sharp eye studied him with that infuriating mix of amusement and authority. Leon's fists clenched under the blankets. Before he could speak, Mun interrupted his thoughts. Dad, I bandaged your wounds, she beamed proudly, gesturing to his side, where a neat wrap of cloth covered his scar. Leon glanced down, surprised. You did this? His voice softened. Mun nodded enthusiastically. Just like Mom showed me. Leon couldn't help but smile. She's got her mother's strength, but none of her cruelty, he thought. He had heard countless tales of dragons being raised in blood and battle, violent and merciless. Yet Mun was different. Kind, warm. Mun, you're amazing, he said, ruffling her hair with a chuckle. Mun giggled, basking in the praise. When I grow up, I'll be even stronger, she said proudly. Leon added with a teasing grin, but you must not turn out like your mother. A sharp voice cut through the moment, cold as ice. What's wrong with being like me? Ross Weiss stood with her arms crossed, her eyes narrowing. Leon froze under her gaze, swallowing hard. Nothing. You're fine, he stammered, knowing better than to provoke her. Definitely not fine, he thought grimly. Mun, oblivious to the tension, tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mom, I did what you told me. I helped Dad, just like you said. Ross Weiss nodded approvingly, her expression softening briefly. Good. Do. But as her gaze shifted back to Leon, her tone sharpened again. She still has much to learn. What a strict mother, Leon thought bitterly, watching the way Ross Weiss handled Mun. He hated how she treated their daughter, always pushing her toward some unattainable ideal of strength and warrior prowess. But arguing with Ross Weiss was pointless. She never wavered in her beliefs, and Leon wasn't in any position to challenge her now. Feeling a sudden wave of protectiveness, Leon turned to Mun. Hey, why don't you go hide in the garden? I'll come find you when I count to 100. How about that? Mun's face lit up with excitement. Really? You'll play hide and seek with me? Of course, Leon said, forcing a smile as his heart warmed at her joy. Go quick. I'm not like your mother. 1, 2, 3. He began counting, purposely slow. No, Dad, don't count so fast, Mun squealed, racing off toward the garden. As soon as she was out of sight, Leon's smile vanished, and the room grew colder. Ross Weiss stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. Her sharp voice cut through the air again. Hey, I'm talking to you. Leon turned to face her, feeling a mix of irritation and dread. Defiance. What? Aren't you being a little hard on me? Ross narrowed her eyes, her expression icy. We dragons went through this ourselves. If we aren't strict from a young age, how can we raise strong warriors? But she's not fully a dragon, Leon argued, his tone softening as he thought of Mun's innocent joy. And besides, she's so cute. Can you really be that tough on her? Ross's gaze remained cold. She is a dragon. And cute is a derogatory term for us. Leon smirked, unable to resist the jab. You're pretty cute, too. Her expression darkened. Don't get ahead of yourself. You're nothing but a slave to me, a way to vent my frustrations. Leon winced at her words, bitter thoughts flooding his mind, but he held his tongue. He knew better than to push her too far. Fine, he muttered, resigned. Ross turned away, her voice steady and commanding. Good. Remember, I'm the queen of the Silver Dragon clan. I have important affairs to manage. The responsibility of caring for the child falls on you. Leon couldn't help but smile at the irony. So, the great dragon slayer becomes a babysitter, he muttered under his breath. Suddenly, Mun's playful voice echoed from the garden. Dad, you can't find me. Come look. Leon smiled, standing up. Found you, he called back, walking toward the garden. But Mun giggled and darted past him. Dad, you missed me. Now I'll find you. Leon blinked in confusion. Wait, didn't I just see you pass by? Shaking his head, he chuckled. Kids and their tricks. Dad, come here. I've got something to show you, Mun called out, her voice full of excitement. All right, Leon sighed, feeling the warmth of her joy wash over him. Despite the chaos of his life, moments like these made everything bearable. At least I still have her, he thought. Standing in the sunlight filtering through the castle windows, a soft smile played on his lips as he watched her happily coloring at a small table nearby. It feels good to have a daughter, he thought, a warmth spreading through his chest. The trials of his past seemed to fade in her presence. It's like my soul is healed. He glanced around the room, imagining a future free from the shadow of Ross's dominance. Sooner or later, I'll help you escape from the clutches of that mother dragon, he promised silently to Mun, his resolve to protect her filling him with a sense of purpose. Dad, look! Mun exclaimed, waving a piece of paper enthusiastically. I drew a family portrait. Leon's heart swelled with pride as she showed off her artwork, but confusion crept in as he studied the drawing. Mun, this is awesome, but wait. Where? He paused, noticing something unusual. She has 2 kids. Mun giggled, pointing at the drawing. It's my sister. Leon's eyes widened. Mun has a sister. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. I didn't just hit the target with 1 shot. I hit it twice. He recalled the child he had seen in the garden earlier, the one who had run away. So that's why she was angry when I called her the wrong name. He furrowed his brow, trying to make sense of it all. Mun, he began. It's okay, Dad. My sister isn't angry. She's just a little shy when she sees you, Mun said brightly. Leon nodded, his heart heavy with the implications. They hadn't spent much time together, so it was understandable that they were still strangers. It's all the dragon's fault for hiding this child from me, he thought bitterly. He needed to confront Ross Weiss and learn the truth. Without wasting another moment, he headed toward her study, his determination unwavering. Ross, he called out as he entered, trying to suppress his nervousness. Where's Mun? She wants to play with her sister, Ross replied casually. She's with her sister. Leon's frustration flared. Ah, you're really good at hiding things. When were you going to tell me I have an older daughter? Don't you already know this by now? She shot back flatly. Leon couldn't believe how calm she was. I have to thank you. Giving birth to a child is hard work, but I didn't expect you to give birth to 2. Ross's expression remained unreadable. Are you so anxious to see her? Who doesn't want to meet their daughter? Leon argued. I'm not like you. A cold and stern mother. I want to cultivate a good relationship with her. Okay, but don't regret it, Ross said, her voice low but firm. In the kitchen, Leon was already plotting his next move. This is my first step to getting closer to my eldest daughter. Open her heart with delicious food. He envisioned a warm, inviting meal that would melt the barriers between them. As he began preparing a creamy stew, nostalgia washed over him, recalling how he used to make it back when he was part of a team. Everyone who had tasted it raved at its sweetness. Perfect for children. Not bad. My cooking skills aren't rusty, he thought, smiling to himself as he stirred. This taste will definitely win Noah over. He could almost see her smile as she took her first bite, the aroma of the cooking filling the air, a fragrant reminder of home. He's just recovered from a serious illness, and he still cooks for his family, one of the servants said. He's a good male dragon who cares about his family, another chimed in. Leon chuckled to himself, thinking, maybe this will help me earn a place in Noah's heart. Just as he finished preparing, Ross entered the kitchen. You don't have to wait for orders at dinner tonight. Go and have a rest, she said. Thank you, Your Majesty, he replied, flashing a charming smile. Just then, Mun burst into the kitchen, her eyes shining with excitement. Dad, what a nice smell. I heard you two love meat the most, so I made stew. Especially for you, Leon beamed at his daughters. Noah, do you feel your father's feelings? Noah stepped into the room, her demeanor as cool as the icy walls of the castle. Leon felt a flicker of anxiety. Why is she so cold? Does she have a grudge against me? He knew he had to make a good first impression. Hello, Noah. My name is Leon Cosmode, and I'm your father. Mun nudged Noah gently. Sister, please talk more. Don't embarrass Dad, Mun said softly. Noah's gaze flickered toward Mun, her expression unreadable. But he looked so weak. Leon's heart sank. What a filial daughter, he thought, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. So this is going to be tougher than I thought. He stood before them, feeling the weight of his new role. So my career as a father faces its first crisis. How can I break through the walls of silence and uncertainty? All he wanted was to forge a bond, but the path ahead was far more challenging than he had anticipated. Family dinners were meant to be warm gatherings filled with laughter and joy, a time for families to bond over shared meals. But for Leon, the dinner table had become a battlefield. He looked around at his two daughters, both strikingly similar yet starkly different. Mun was bubbly and cheerful, while Noah, with her dark eyes set in a permanent frown, seemed to embody her mother's seriousness. Sister, help me cut it, Mun said, her little hands struggling with the knife. Leon's heart ached at the sight. He wished he could ease Noah's tension as easily as Mun did with her carefree spirit. Do you like today's food, Noah? He asked, trying to spark a conversation. Disgusting, Noah shot back, wrinkling her nose as she pushed her plate away. So why are you so happy? Mun asked, glancing between her parents. Your father has finally reunited with our family, Ross Weiss replied, her voice light. Seeing him so happy makes me naturally happy too. Leon attempted a smile, but it felt forced. Of course, I'm happy to be with my family, he said, though the words felt hollow in his throat. Dad, can you have dinner with us every day? Mun's innocent question pierced through the tension. Well, Leon stammered, struggling to navigate the emotional minefield. I don't want to eat with this female dragon every day, Noah blurted out, frustration evident in her tone. Why not? Ross Weiss pressed, a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. Because I want to study at the Young Dragon Department of St. Heath Academy, Noah declared with determination. Leon raised an eyebrow, surprised. The Young Dragon Department is full of 4- and 5-year-olds. Why are you so anxious to enroll? Because I want to defeat more dragon slayers, Noah exclaimed, her voice full of conviction. Leon coughed, the realization dawning on him. It seems this child wants to defeat me, her own father. But Noah, you're still so young. You could get hurt, he cautioned gently. Don't treat me like a child, Noah shot back, her face flushed with indignation. Leon sighed, sensing the battle lines being drawn. He didn't want to stifle her ambition, but the idea of her facing such danger terrified him. I think Noah's idea is pretty good, Ross Weiss chimed in, her tone challenging. The sooner you learn the skills, the sooner you can fight the dragon slayers. Isn't that right, Leon? Or do you have any reason to stop Noah from going to school? Leon felt cornered. If I continue to oppose it, Noah will definitely hate me as a father even more. The thought made his stomach churn. He realized he had to change her mind subtly. No, no more, he muttered under his breath, frustration boiling within him. Damn it, I finally know that this female dragon wants to use Noah to mentally attack me during this dinner. Since your father is okay with it, it's happily decided, Ross Weiss declared with a triumphant smile. The entrance test for St. Heath Academy will be held in a month. During this month, your father will help you prepare. Yes, mother, Mun cheered, clapping her hands in delight. As dinner came to a close, Leon tried to shake off the mounting pressure. Hey, Ross Weiss, he called out, hoping to break the tension. These plates haven't been cleaned yet. Just let the servants do it, Ross Weiss replied dismissively. But Leon stood firm. After dinner, we should clean up and wash the plates together. This is the correct way to end a family dinner. Perhaps it would create a more harmonious atmosphere, even if it's just for show. Come with me, Mun, he said, trying to keep things light. Sister, where are we going? Mun asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Are you going to help? Ross Weiss called after them, but Leon brushed her off, determined to focus on his daughters. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. He remembered the warning he received 2 years ago. Ross Weiss, have you forgotten what I said? You should never be alone with a highly trained and strong dragon slayer. What do you want to do? She challenged, her eyes narrowing. Leon felt a surge of frustration. Before, I traveled a long distance and was exhausted. I was controlled and played with by your dragon pattern. Now it's different. I don't think you can escape from here using that trick, Ross Weiss taunted, who said I was going to run away. You think I'm incapable of doing anything, Your Majesty, Leon shot back. His mind raced. He recalled from his studies that the dragon pattern made her tail extremely sensitive. When your tail is pinched, you're like a kitten being pinched by the back of the neck, weak and powerless. A smirk crept onto his face. Ross Weiss, you dragons are eager to conquer and control everything. But have you ever been conquered? The challenge hung in the air, thick with tension. Leon realized this dinner was more than just a meal. It was a declaration of war, a fight for his place in this family, and against Ross Weiss's iron grip. Though his head throbbed as he struggled to gather his thoughts, the first sensation that pierced through the fog of confusion was an all-too-familiar weight pressed down on Leon. The dragon's tail tightly coiled around him. Let go of my tail, he gasped, trying to pry the appendage off like a kid fighting against a playful puppy. From the moment he opened his eyes, it felt like his dignity had been trampled underfoot, reduced to a mere plaything for Ross Weiss's amusement. Memories of the last few days flashed through his mind, leaving a bitter taste. What do you think about us switching things up tonight? The memory of her smirk sent a shiver down his spine. Leon, you bastard, she had exclaimed, half laughing, half irritated. He couldn't help but wonder if the queen and her family had enjoyed their time together at his expense. Oh my, it's so clean, he overheard Mun exclaim, and his heart sank. Was it the prince who did it? She whispered, her voice low. Hush, be quiet, Your Majesty. You don't want to be discovered by the maids outside. Another voice chimed in. The queen, who is usually so high and mighty, has become like this, Leon thought. He had to give it to them. They were resourceful. Well done. Let's get started, my dear wife, he heard Ross Weiss say, her tone dripping with mischief. 3 days had passed since that night, and Leon had not stirred from his bed. Is he dead? He heard one of his daughters whisper, the thought sending a cold wave of panic through him. Just wait and see, the other replied, their childish banter a stark reminder of their innocence amidst the chaos. It hurts so much, Leon groaned, finally managing to pry his eyes open. He is not dead yet, came the hesitant response from the other side of the room. Is there anyone who treats his father like this? Leon thought, a mix of annoyance and disbelief washing over him, but his frustrations quickly faded when he caught a glimpse of the 2 little girls peeking into the room. Dad is awake again, one of them squealed, excitement bubbling over. Leon blinked, still trying to piece together what had happened. When did I faint? He mumbled, struggling to remember. Do you need me to help you recall? A teasing voice chimed in. Yes, he murmured, realizing that after that night, the dragon pattern had been invalidated. He remembered being hit hard by Ross Weiss. This female dragon is so cruel. If I were an ordinary person, I would have died several times under her claw, he thought. As he glanced at Ross Weiss, a fleeting thought crossed his mind. If I look closely, she's indeed quite pretty. She might be over 200 years old, but her spirit is vibrant. Why isn't Dad moving? He heard one of the girls ask, catching the hint of concern in her voice. He just looked at our mother and was stunned, her sister replied, rolling her eyes. So this one is quite suitable for you, Ross Weiss said, her voice dripping with satisfaction as she continued to comb her hair. I didn't expect you to be so considerate. Have you done this for other women before? Leon shot back, irritation bubbling to the surface. Well, when I was a kid, I often combed the hair of my master's donkey, and I was very skilled at it, she said with a grin. Dad, what is a donkey? One of the girls piped up, her eyes wide with curiosity. Donkeys are similar to dragons, Leon explained, feeling a strange sense of normalcy amid the chaos. They have 2 ears and a tail. They are very stubborn and like to hum when they're unhappy. Just like your mother. Dad, are you okay? The girl exclaimed, her concern palpable. I'm fine. Your task today is to learn how to write your name. Your father will teach you, he instructed. You assigned me another task without my permission, the little girl protested, but her face quickly broke into a smile. Yay, Dad will teach us how to write. I can write, the other chimed in, her enthusiasm infectious. Sister, let's go to the study room to find a pen with nice colors. What color do you want? Mun called out as she dashed down the hall, her laughter echoing behind her. Leon smiled, momentarily distracted from his thoughts. My sister is coming to visit me today, he said, turning serious. The dread building within him, he added. I don't want you to appear in front of her. What? You won't let me meet your family too? Ross Weiss questioned, raising an eyebrow. Leon groaned. You are now a male dragon who married into the Silver Dragon clan. You've been in a coma for 2 years due to some disease and have just woken up recently. If it comes to the point where we have to meet, you'll have to play along with the identity I've made up. God, your majesty, female dragon, do you think I will listen to you obediently? Leon shot back, defiance flaring in his chest. Ross Weiss smirked. I'm going to embarrass you in front of your sister, he declared, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. He felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. He realized that the real battle was just beginning. The stakes were high, but for the first time in a long while, he felt alive. But as the games began in the cozy study of Silver Dragon Castle, Leon found himself in a different kind of battlefield, teaching his 2 daughters, Mun and Noah, how to write their names. All right, girls, watch carefully, Leon said with fatherly pride, drawing the letters on 2 small pieces of paper. Mun, with her wagging little tail and bright eyes, watched her father like he was revealing the secrets of the universe. Noah, on the other hand, crossed her arms and glanced at the paper as if it was beneath her to even acknowledge this basic scribbling exercise. Typical Noah, expressionless, cold, but definitely judging. Handing each of them their papers, Leon instructed. Just copy what I wrote. Practice it a few times. Mun, her excitement barely contained, stared at her name like it was a masterpiece, eagerly nodding. Noah, however, was looking at the paper with her usual stoic expression. Paper, with the same intensity she'd give to a speck of dirt on her shoe. So, not as good as what Mom wrote, Noah declares, her voice icy enough to freeze the ink. Leon blinks, caught off guard by her brutally honest critique. Before he can think of a witty comeback, he quickly stands up. All right, I forgot to give something to your mother, he says, waving at them cheerfully as he heads for the door. I'll check on your progress later. Mun, ever the sweet one, waves back at her dad with a smile so warm it could melt a glacier. Noah, meanwhile, shoots a cold glare his way. Is he stupid? She mutters, deadpan. Mun giggles at her sister's remark, enjoying the rare moment of snark. Noah, clearly flustered at being caught showing some emotion, denies any joy. I'm not laughing. Just hurry up and write, she grumbles, folding her arms even tighter. But as Noah turns back to the paper, her usual icy demeanor softens just a little. Her cheeks turn faintly pink, blushing. Surely not. Or maybe, just maybe, her father's bumbling charm got to her after all. At the gates of Silver Dragon Castle, Ross Weiss buzzes with excitement as she sees her elder sister, Eel, the Red Dragon Queen. Ross dashes over, throwing her arms around her sister in a rare moment of unguarded cheerfulness. Long time no, she exclaims, her usual stern look replaced with warmth. Eel, noticing her sister's newfound rosiness, raises a brow. You look glowing, she says. Ross, caught off guard, blushes and self-consciously touches her cheek. Do I? No way. I don't think that's true at all. She stammers, obviously flustered, but trying to keep her cool. Eel's sharp gaze scans the area before she changes the subject. I heard your husband woke up. Why isn't he here to greet me? She asks, her tone filled with curiosity. Ross lets out a small, awkward laugh, waving her hand dismissively. Oh, Leon's not feeling well today. Otherwise, he'd definitely be here. Of course, she leaves out the part where Leon's illness was more of a strategic retreat from Eel's intimidating presence. Eel's disappointment is clear. That's too bad. I was looking forward to seeing the Dragon King who kidnapped you, she says, leaning closer and lowering her voice. Is it true the bond between you two was purely political? No love at all? Ross Weiss freezes at the implication. Political? Who said that? She huffs, turning her head away and blushing deeply. Just because we had kids doesn't mean we're in love or anything. Not now, not in the future. Eel chuckles knowingly. Still trying to act tough, huh? But Ross, unwilling to admit defeat, quickly changes the subject in typical Ross fashion by clinging to her sister's arm and suggesting they visit the garden, a classic diversion tactic. As they walk towards the garden, completely unaware, a periscope sneaks up from the shadows. Leon, being Leon, is spying on them from the castle. He watches them closely, mentally taking notes. So that's her sister, huh? Let's see just how far this dragon business goes, he mutters to himself, already plotting some ridiculous scheme. Down in the garden, the mood grows more serious as Isle brings up the stability in the dragon clans lately, especially with the Red Flame Dragon King making moves. Constantine's been more active recently, she says, her tone grim. Ross Weiss stiffens at the name, her expression changing to one of concern. Constantine. He's been off the radar for years, Ross mutters, worry creeping into her voice. Ely shrugs. Who knows? He's always been a handful. Maybe he's trying to expand his territory again. As the words sink in, Ross feels an unwelcome sensation. The dragon mark on her chest starts to glow. Her eyes widen in shock. Eel, ever the observant sister, notices Ross's brief distraction. What's wrong? Eel continues talking about border defenses and sending Xenong for updates, but Ross is desperately trying to suppress the burning sensation inside her. Her face reddens, her body trembling as she wraps her arms around herself, trying to control the dragon mark's influence. Barely able to focus, Ross thinks to herself, if this keeps up, I'm going to lose it. She lets out a soft moan, her control slipping. Eel, now genuinely concerned, turned back to Ross. Little Rose, are you sure you're okay? Ross, blushing furiously and struggling to keep it together, quickly comes up with an excuse. I just remembered something urgent. I'll be back in 20 minutes, she blurts out, spinning on her heel and storming off before Eel can say another word. Eel watches her sister retreat and sighs knowingly. Ah, young people these days. Always playing with fire, she chuckles to herself, amused. Meanwhile, Leon, lounging in his corner smugly, contemplates the chaos he set in motion. Let's see how long Ross Weiss can keep her cool, he muses to himself, imagining the fireworks when she finally snaps. The thought brings a smirk to his face, but his little victory is cut short when the door flies open. An absolutely furious Ross Weiss storms in, slamming the door with the force of a dragon. Leon! She shouts, her voice filled with fiery wrath. Oh, he knows that tone. Still, he plays it cool, acting completely oblivious as he lazily tilts his head. Oh, back already. What's the rush? He asks, feigning innocence, though the wicked glint in his eyes betrays him. Ross doesn't waste a second. In a blur of motion, she's right up in his face, grabbing him by the collar with enough force to make him. Stumbling, he looked at her wide-eyed. You did this on purpose, didn't you? Making the dragon mark resonate, embarrassing me in front of my sister like that. Her face was flushed with rage, and her grip tightened with every word. Leon, sensing the storm brewing, realized it was time to play his trump card, time to be pathetic, his favorite strategy. His eyes went wide with fake hurt, and he put on his best puppy, dog face as though her accusation had deeply wounded him. So, the moment the words left his mouth, Ross Weiss froze. Her grip loosened, and before she knew it, her hands dropped from his collar. Her face turned redder than a rose as the embarrassment hit her like a tidal wave. She quickly covered her face with one hand. How does he do that? She thought. 1 second, she was ready to throttle him, and the next, she felt as flustered as a schoolgirl. Leon could barely contain his grin. It worked, he thought, genuinely shocked. The woman who could crush him in her sleep was blushing like a tomato. He half expected her to kill him on the spot, but instead, she glared at him, sputtering. Oh, you're shameless. A feted prisoner talking nonsense like that. Leon just kept smiling, watching her try to regain her composure. There was something hilarious about seeing Ross Weiss, feared by all, squirming under a few soft words. Put those thoughts away right now, she snapped, her voice quivering more from embarrassment than anger. He stayed quiet, still grinning like a cat who got the cream. Ross Weiss huffed and spun on her heel. "Do this again, and I won't let you off so easily." She stormed out, still flustered, slamming the door behind her. Leon grinned like a madman. "Scared me. This dragon mark really is something." But then a sudden thought hit him. Why was his heart racing? Why did thinking of her blushing face make him feel giddy? "Get a grip, Leon. You're going soft," he muttered, shaking his head as if to clear the thoughts. Before he could reflect too much on his strange reaction, reality kicked in. His daughters were still waiting. Moon was probably slacking off, and Noah was probably still grinding away like the overachiever she was. With a deep breath, he snapped back to his usual self. Time to get back to being a dad. Meanwhile, in the study room, Noah scribbled away with intense focus while Moon, tail wagging impatiently, sighed dramatically. "So, why hasn't Dad come back yet?" she grumbled, clearly more interested in mischief than writing practice. The night sky over Silver Dragon Castle glowed faintly under the moonlight as Eel, the Red Dragon Queen, waved goodbye to her sister, Ross Weiss. Her massive dragon wings stretched as she prepared to fly back to her own castle. "Take care on the road," Ross called out, waving as if her sister could just stroll back rather than fly with a battalion of knights. Eel, already transformed into a majestic red dragon, paused. "Next time, let me meet your husband," she said, with a teasing edge to her voice. Ross Weiss forced a smile. "Sure," she lied smoothly, hiding the dread bubbling up inside her. As Eel and her knights took to the air, Ross stood there watching them disappear into the night sky. The castle fell silent again, but it wasn't the peaceful kind. Her expression darkened. The smirk left her face, replaced by an intense, simmering look that could melt stone. Turning toward the castle, her lips curled in frustration. "Damn dragon slayer," she muttered under her breath. "I still haven't taught him a proper lesson." But tonight, her thoughts grew more dangerous, her anger sharpening. Leon was in for it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the castle, Leon, blissfully unaware of the doom heading his way, sneezed loudly. He chuckled, wiping his nose. "Is the female dragon scolding me again?" he wondered. Deciding to ignore the ominous feeling in his gut, he turned back to more important matters. His daughters Moon and Noah. Leon sat by their bed, reading a storybook called The Story of the Young Dragon. As their eyelids grew heavy, both girls looked angelic as they slowly drifted off to sleep, their tiny snores filling the room. "They're cute when they're not demanding snacks or plotting my demise," Leon whispered to himself with a grin. He gently closed the book and carefully tucked them in, making sure every inch of their adorable selves was covered by the blanket. "Don't catch a cold," he whispered softly before tiptoeing toward the door. Just as he reached to close it quietly, the door behind him slammed with a thunderous bang. Leon jumped, his heart nearly leaping out of his chest as he spun around to see none other than Ross Weiss's. Her face was set like stone, and her eyes burned with a seriousness that sent shivers down his spine. "So, where do you think you're going?" she demanded, her voice a low growl that made Leon wish he could vanish into thin air. With a sheepish smile, Leon scratched the back of his head. Is your sister gone?" he asked, clearly trying to deflect the impending doom hanging over him. Ross Weiss's lips curled into a smirk, but not the friendly kind. "Oh, she's gone," she said slowly. "But we still have things to take care of tonight." Without another word, she stepped closer, her intent clear. Ross Weiss grabbed Leon by the collar, yanking him forward with the strength of, well, a dragon. Leon's face twisted in panic. Wait, no, I'm too fragile for this," he protested, desperately trying to pry her hand off his shirt as she dragged him through the hallways. "Can't we discuss this rationally? How about over tea or something?" In the dimly lit Silver Dragon Queen's bedroom, steam rose from a small tub of hot water that Leon had just slammed down with a thud. His face twisted in frustration as he glared at Ross Weiss. "So, water's ready," he said through gritted teeth, barely able to mask his irritation. "Now, what exactly do you need it for?" Ross Weiss, lounging arrogantly on the bed, extended her feet toward him as if issuing a royal command. "I've been walking all day, and I'm very tired. Wash my feet," she demanded, her tone dripping with entitlement. Leon blinked at her, shock and disbelief hardening his features. "Excuse me," his mind raced. He was a dragon slayer, trained for battle, not for washing feet. But here he was, at the mercy of this overbearing, infuriating woman. Ross Weiss, completely unfazed by his visible disbelief, smiled condescendingly. "Stop talking nonsense and do as you're told. This is your punishment for what you did today." Grumbling under his breath, Leon bent down and removed her heels. Dragon Slayer, more like foot. Washing servant, he thought bitterly, his pride taking another blow. His eyes flickered to her feet. How many dragon slayers have had their feet stomped on, I wonder? Ross Weiss noticed his lingering stare, and a wave of embarrassment washed over her. What's with that weird smile on his face, she thought, her cheeks turning slightly pink. Could it be a disgusting foot fetish? The thought made her shudder. Suddenly, Leon snapped into action with a playful smirk. He grabbed her feet and dunked them into the hot water without warning. "Get down here," he muttered, not bothering to hide his irritation. Ross Weiss yelled, startled by the sudden heat. "Ow, that's too hot, you idiot," she shouted, kicking Leon hard in the chin. The impact was swift and painful, sending Leon crashing to the ground like a rag doll. Before he could recover, Ross Weiss was standing over him, one foot pressing down on his chest. Her cold eyes narrowed. "Are you trying to take revenge on me?" she asked, her voice sharp as ice. Even through the pain, Leon managed to smirk. "Who told you to make me wash your feet?" he retorted, though his voice was strained. Ross Weiss's face reddened as she glared down at him. "Seems like you still don't have a long memory." Slowly, she dragged her foot from his chest down to his lower body. Her touch sent a mix of anger and something else Leon didn't care to acknowledge. His face flushed as she pressed down, her arrogant smirk deepening. "I never thought you'd be stepped on by a dragon," Ross Weiss teased, applying just enough pressure to make him squirm. Leon's face burned, both from rage and the unbearable humiliation. In a broken voice he gasped, "Stop!" The discomfort, now compounded with humiliation, was getting to him. "I'm a dragon slayer, not a..." Ross Weiss grinned wickedly. "Let's see how long you can endure this." She pressed harder, her arrogance practically suffocating him. Frustrated beyond words, Leon glared up at her. "I can't lose to this damn female dragon." Gathering his remaining strength, he caught her leg in his hand and shakily stood up, but with determination. "You know," he said, a gleam in his eye, "I've eaten pig trotters, cow trotters, even goat trotters, but never dragon trotters." Leon grinned as he bit down on Ross Weiss's leg, a mischievous glint in his eye. "What the hell are you?" she began. But before she could finish, Leon declared with a wicked grin, "Tonight's snack, raw dragon claws." Ross Weiss let out an ear-piercing scream, her face twisting in fury and disbelief. You bastard! I'll kill you!" she shrieked, shaking her leg frantically to free herself from Leon's ridiculous grip. The next morning, with the sun barely peeking through the windows, Moon and Noah slowly began to wake. Noah, sharp as always, was already fully alert, while Moon, still tangled in sleep, rubbed her eyes groggily as she blinked into wakefulness. Ross Weiss entered the room with a noticeable limp, her leg wrapped in fresh bandages. Moon, half awake but already curious, squinted at her mother. "Mom, why are you limping?" she asked, her small voice filled with sleepy confusion. Ross Weiss, her face the picture of calm despite the bruising, waved it off with a casual, "It's nothing." She didn't bother to explain further, her usual stern demeanor firmly in place. On the other side of the room, Leon stood with his arms folded, trying to look nonchalant. The large patch on his cheek, however, told a different story. Moon's eyes widened when she spotted it. "Dad, why do you have bruises on your face?" Leon, mirroring Ross Weiss's cold indifference, crossed his arms tighter and replied with a shrug, "It's nothing." Moon, standing between her mysterious-looking parents, furrowed her brows. She placed both hands on her hips, her tiny mind working overtime. Her eyes flicked from Ross Weiss's bandaged leg to Leon's bruised face. Her concern grew as the gears in her little brain turned slowly. Then a light bulb went off. Suddenly, her face brightened, as if she had just solved the world's biggest mystery. Excitement bubbling over, she raised her hand triumphantly, her eyes sparkling. "I know you two must have played some really fun games without telling me." Ross Weiss's expression didn't flinch, though her lips twitched slightly, while Leon fought the urge to facepalm. Always the composed one, Ross Weiss crossed her arms and cast a blank, almost judging, stare at Moon. Leon and Ross Weiss walked to the garden outside the Silver Dragon Castle. Both were looking away, each walking in their own way. One maid nudged another and whispered, pointing, "Look, the queen and the prince are dating." The blue-haired maid giggled and remarked, "What a lovely couple they are." However, she added that it seemed the queen and the prince didn't appear very familiar with each other. The other maid simply watched them with contentment. Ross Weiss and Leon continued walking without speaking to each other, the silence between them growing. Leon, watching Ross Weiss from behind, wondered why things had turned out this way, thinking it was because of her. Some time earlier, Ross Weiss had suggested they take a walk together. Leon, shocked, had asked why he should go for a walk with her. Ross Weiss had replied that it was his job to maintain the false appearance of family harmony in front of outsiders. Back in the garden, Leon glanced at Ross Weiss and felt that something was off about her today. She wasn't usually so proactive, and he wondered what she was planning. Meanwhile, Moon and Noah, hiding behind a tree, observed their mom and dad. Moon muttered, "Dad is so stupid he can't even hold hands." Suddenly, an idea struck Moon's little brain. Determined, her bright eyes sparkled as she clenched her tiny fists and declared that she was going to help them. Noah, taken aback, told her to wait, but Moon didn't listen. She jumped up and ran toward them. Noah shouted for her to leave them alone, but Moon, already in motion, ignored Noah's words. "Mom, Dad!" Moon called out as she raced toward them. Hearing her voice, Leon and Ross Weiss turned to see her running toward them. Leon asked why Moon had followed him. Moon grabbed Leon and Ross Weiss by surprise, holding each of their hands. She then combined their hands, making them hold hands with each other. Both Leon and Ross Weiss were startled by Moon's sudden action. Moon cheerfully said, when taking a walk, "You should hold hands." Quickly turning back, she ran away, saying she was going to play with her sister. Leon watched Moon leave and wondered where the child had learned such things. When Moon returned to Noah, Noah pinched her cheeks for not listening to her. Moon, tearing up cutely, admitted she was wrong, promised not to do it again, and asked her sister to let go. Leon and Ross Weiss looked back at each other with blank, confused expressions. Blushing and looking away, Leon said, "This is a bit unexpected. What should I do?" Ross Weiss, also blushing, replied, "Hold it like this." As Leon and Ross Weiss continued walking, Leon commented that she seemed extra docile today, which made him feel a little uncomfortable. Ross Weiss replied, "It seems like I've tamed you. Now that we're getting along, you're not used to it." While they chatted and walked, Moon and Noah watched them from behind a tree. Leon glanced at Ross Weiss and thought about how she had always presented herself as a queen in front of others. He didn't expect her to be so flustered by something as small as holding hands. He wondered if her strictness as a mother stemmed from not knowing how to connect with her children. Leon then commented, "Moon and Noah always call you mother in front of others. Doesn't that feel distant? You see, the normal way of addressing parents pairs dad with mom. Moon always calls me dad but calls you mother. Doesn't that make it seem more distant?" Ross Weiss, looking away, asked, "Is there really a big difference between mother and mom?" Leon, smiling brightly at her, replied, "There is. You should try getting them to call you mom. I bet they'll feel closer to you that way." Ross Weiss's face turned red, taken aback by Leon's words and cheerfulness. Composing herself, she said she understood and would try it next time. Leon, surprised by her sudden enthusiasm, asked why she was walking so fast. As they continued walking in the garden, Ross Weiss suddenly asked, "Are you homesick?" Leon questioned why she was bringing it up all of a sudden, since she wouldn't let him go back anyway. Ross Weiss replied, "I can't send you home, but there's something that might help ease your homesickness a little." Leon, confused, remained silent as they walked on. They arrived at the castle's warehouse. Standing before the large door, Leon wondered what it was. Ross Weiss explained that she never gave it a name, and he could call it a warehouse, utility room, or whatever he liked, as it didn't matter. Ross Weiss unlocked the warehouse door with the keys in her hand. As they entered, Leon looked around and remarked, "The dragon's treasure trove." Finding a bracelet, he said that if it were placed in the Empire, it could be sold for at least hundreds of thousands of gold coins. Ross Weiss told him it was a bracelet her grandmother gave her when she was a child. She added that besides the spoils, there were also items that held personal meaning to her. Leon, looking at Ross Weiss, commented that he hadn't heard her speak much about her family except for her sister. She explained that she never met her father or mother. She and her sister were raised by their grandmother. Hearing this, Leon said, "It's similar to my own experience. I grew up in an orphanage and never knew my parents until I was adopted by my master and his wife." Leon then asked why she had brought him there. Ross Weiss opened a treasure chest and said she had something that might temporarily make him forget his troubles. Leon, still confused, remained silent. When Ross Weiss opened the chest, Leon, surprised, exclaimed, "It's the black gold armor." Ross Weiss asked, "Haven't you always wanted to get that armor back? Am I right?" Leon, in disbelief, asked if he was dreaming and if she was really going to give it to him. With a cunning smile and a dark expression, Ross Weiss confirmed it. As Leon touched the chest of the black gold armor, a blue light began to glow. Shocked, Leon realized it was enchanted with a dragon mark. Internally, he thought, "Black gold armor, my good brother, how come you have fallen as well?" Ross Weiss, smirking, told Leon he had finally fallen into the trap. Leon, now angry, clenched his teeth as he glared at her. A formation appeared beneath Leon, and he angrily asked Ross Weiss what she had done to him. The dragon mark on Leon's chest began glowing and intensifying. Ross Weiss watched him with a smile. The dragon mark on her chest also reacted to Leon's, making it clear that Ross Weiss had activated it on Leon's chest to advance her revenge. Ross Weiss arrogantly explained, "I attached the dragon mark to the surface of the armor to enhance its properties. The moment you touched the armor, it activated." Leon suddenly fell to the ground due to the intense pressure upon him as the dragon mark burned on his chest. Clutching his chest, shaking and gritting his teeth in anger, he thought of the despicable female dragon and realized he had been careless. Ross Weiss, laughing at Leon, said that the enhanced dragon mark had double its effect. Holding Leon's chin and lifting his head to meet her gaze, she arrogantly asked, "Can my dear dragon slayer endure it?" Leon trembled under the dragon mark's influence, glaring at Ross Weiss through gritted teeth. With a voice full of hatred and resentment, Leon angrily called out Ross Weiss's name. Ross Weiss then pushed Leon to the ground. As he hit the floor, he screamed in pain. Leon's face flushed red as his emotions intensified. Frustrated, he internally admitted that he couldn't move his body, but the urge in his lower body was stronger than ever. Ross Weiss climbed on top of Leon with a smirk. She asked, "Did you think I bore no grudge for being conquered by you before?" Leon, lying beneath her, could do nothing but glare at her angrily, having lost control over his body. Ross Weiss told him that for the past few days, she had been thinking about how to take her revenge and make him lower his guard. However, she hadn't expected him to be fooled so easily. Leon's face reddened further as his inner desires grew, fueled by the dragon mark on his chest. Hearing Ross Weiss's words, Leon angrily muttered the female dragon in frustration. Ross Weiss's face also flushed red from the intimate situation. Teasingly, she asked Leon if her acting skills weren't quite good enough. As Ross Weiss continued to dominate Leon's body, he yelled at her angrily, asking if everything she had told him that day was a lie, about never meeting her parents, letting Moon call her mom, and holding her hand. Ross Weiss denied it, saying that everything she had said was true, but it didn't change what she was about to do to him now. As Ross Weiss removed her clothes, she asked Leon what he had told her before, whether she liked to conquer naked. Looking at Leon's flustered face, Ross Weiss smirked and admitted with a smile that she did indeed like to conquer. Leaning closer to Leon and climbing over him, she gazed into his eyes and teasingly asked, "Is my dear husband ready?" Leon, frustrated by the situation, remained helpless. "You all know what's going to happen next, so let's move forward." After a while, Leon, with a traumatized expression, thought to himself. Ross Weiss, leaning on his chest, looked at him with affectionate eyes and smiled. Her tail wrapped around Leon, keeping him bound and unable to move. Leon observed her smile in silence. Looking at Ross Weiss with a cold voice, he asked, "What are you doing?" Ross Weiss suddenly held Leon's face and said that, compared to 2 years ago, the scars on his face had faded a little, but he looked more haggard, worn by the vicissitudes of life, with more of the flavor of a mature man. Unmoved by her words, Leon retorted that she was trying to play tricks on him again, and that he wouldn't fall for it this time. In response, Ross Weiss smiled lightly. Looking back at Leon, she remarked, "You've gotten smarter." Instantly suspicious, Leon turned to Ross Weiss with a questioning look as she hesitated, stopping mid-sentence with "but." Ross Weiss, with a flushed face, laughed at him and said that his health was not as good as it used to be. Hearing her words, Leon's eyes widened in shock, feeling as if the universe had collapsed around him. It was as if he had lost his soul with just one sentence from Ross Weiss. His face paled as he imagined her words implying that he was no longer as fit as before. His imagination spiraled, interpreting her remark to mean he was no longer the man he once was. As his thoughts ran wild, his jaw dropped wider. And wider and wider. Finally, next day, at the Silver Dragon Castle, Leon appeared with dark circles and bags under his eyes. As he opened the door, he announced, "I'm coming." When Leon entered the room, he found Ross Weiss and Noah inside. Seeing him, Ross Weiss folded her arms and greeted him with a mocking tone. "Good morning." She smirked and remarked, "It seems you didn't sleep well last night." Leon, gritting his teeth in anger, retorted that it was all because of what she had said. Ross Weiss, laughing teasingly, claimed that she didn't remember anything. From the side, Noah watched the exchange between Leon and Ross Weiss and thought, "It's starting again." Ross Weiss shifted the conversation, mentioning that the entrance exam for St. Heath Academy was very strict. She told Leon he should start tutoring Noah on dragon knowledge today. Getting closer to Leon, she leaned in and whispered in his ear, taunting him. "For now, you can only demonstrate your value in other areas." Hearing her words, Leon, fueled by anger, snapped back that he was simply not in a good state yesterday. With a determined look on his face, Leon pointed his finger at Ross Weiss and loudly declared that he would make sure Noah passed the test. However, at the same time, he wanted to use this opportunity to exchange something of equal value from her. Ross Weiss said she was willing to agree to Leon's request, but warned him that it couldn't be too excessive. Leon firmly responded, "A promise is a promise." Laughing, Ross Weiss left, telling him he should study hard. Mocking tone. She called him dear and warned him not to get too tired. Fueled by anger, Leon shouted after her, "Female dragon, you're done!" Ross Weiss waved her hand dismissively as she walked away. Noah, watching the interaction, asked Leon why he quarreled with her mom. Leon, folding his arms, denied it and said it was just their daily communication. Leon, realizing with surprise, asked Noah what she had called her mother. Noah responded, saying, "Mom." Leon, taking a step closer to Noah, asked if she had been told to change the name to that. He then inquired whether she preferred the old name or the current one. Noah, looking away with a light blush, replied that she preferred the current one. Leon smiled brightly at her and said he knew they'd love it. Noah, surprised by her father's cheerful demeanor, remained silent as she looked at him. Turning to leave, she asked when they could start studying. Leon told Noah to wait for him in the Silver Dragon Castle's children's study room. Deeply engrossed in books, he prepared to teach Noah for the upcoming entrance exam. When Ross Weiss entered the room, she asked Leon why he hadn't gone to bed since it was so late. Without looking up, Leon explained that Noah had a remarkable ability to learn and understand, so simple teaching methods wouldn't be effective for her. He shared his plan to organize key knowledge points and combine them with practice questions, which meant he had to stay up late to prepare the lessons. Confidently, Leon stated that Noah was a very smart child, and he was sure he could help her pass the test within a month. Ross Weiss arrogantly replied, "It's inevitable since Noah takes after me," with a smirking smile. Leon looked at her and remarked, "That's not necessarily the case." Placing his hand on his chest, Leon, with a light smile, declared that he was a dragon, slaying genius, always graduating first in both written and practical exams every year and earning all the highest level scholarships. Then, smirking at Ross Weiss, he asked, "What champion titles does Her Majesty hold?" Ross Weiss, stunned by his intellect and impressive academic background, was left speechless. Her jaw dropped as she struggled to find a response, looking at Leon with sharp eyes. Ross Weiss thought to herself that she always assumed he was a reckless man who only knew how to fight and kill. She never expected him to also be a top student. Smiling, Ross Weiss sarcastically countered, "How did someone so powerful end up as my prisoner?" Leon, growing frustrated, replied, "I lost only the one time." Then, with a cute pout and a crying face, he added, "One misstep can lead to eternal regret," comparing himself to a tiger bullied by a dragon in troubled times. Ross Weiss chuckled at his cuteness and teased him, saying, "You must be afraid of being ridden by a dragon." Her attention then shifted to the table, where she noticed some chili peppers. Curiously, she asked what he was planning to do with them. Leon, turning to her question, picked up a chili pepper and said he had taken it from the kitchen to refresh himself. As Leon moved to take a bite, Ross Weiss screamed in concern, telling him to stop, but it was too late. He had already bitten into the chili. Panicked, Ross Weiss explained that it was a dragon's yellow pepper meant for dragons, and worried that a human like him wouldn't be able to handle it. As soon as Leon chewed, the intense spiciness hit him, his face turning redder by the second. The chili was so spicy that Leon let out a fiery breath as if flames were about to shoot from his mouth. "It's so spicy," Leon exclaimed, running around the room, desperately searching for water, while Ross Weiss watched, unable to offer any help. As Leon continued to panic, Ross Weiss suddenly grabbed his face with her hands, gently touching his cheeks. They stood close to each other. Leon was stunned by the moment as he realized how near they were. His face turned a shade of red as he glanced at Ross Weiss's hands on his cheeks, feeling warmth rise inside him. Blushing, Ross Weiss looked away awkwardly, explaining that her hands were cooler and might make him feel more comfortable. Leon, now feeling the comfort of her touch, slowly placed his hands over hers, appreciating the soothing sensation. Once fierce like a tiger, he softened like a kitten in her grasp, gently rubbing his face against her hands. His blush deepened as he noticed how cool and comforting her fingertips felt. Not sharp like ice, but gentle, refreshing, and perfectly fitting her touch. Leon finally calmed down and thanked Ross Weiss, telling her he felt much better. She acknowledged him with a nod and slowly released his cheeks. Both of their faces turned red, flustered by the intimacy of the moment. They glanced away from each other, overwhelmed with embarrassment. Leon, feeling the heat from the moment and the tension in the air, struggled to breathe, while Ross Weiss, blushing, stared at the ground, unsure of what to say next. As Ross Weiss prepared to leave, she told Leon to go to bed early and not to eat too much chili. She warned him that if his mouth got too spicy, he'd have to teach Noah using sign language. Leon brushed her off, saying, "I got it." But as Ross Weiss left, Leon watched her, blushing, thinking to himself that he actually wanted her to touch his face a little longer. Snapping back to reality, Leon gritted his teeth in frustration and told himself to wake up. He thought bitterly that Ross Weiss was the evil dragon who cornered him, squeezed him like crazy, and then had the nerve to tell him he didn't have enough physical strength. Freaking out, Leon realized that just thinking about it felt a bit perverted. Determined to regain his strength, Leon turned to his books, searching for a solution. He flipped through the pages, reading about different remedies. First, he came across information about red dragon fruit, which helps regulate chi and blood, but dismissed it, thinking it wasn't what he needed. Then, he read about lotus grass, which regulates digestion and treats external injuries. But again, he decided it wasn't the answer. Finally, Leon found what he'd been searching for. Dragon Big Force, a highly effective health tonic that harmonizes yin and yang. Yang nourishes the body and strengthens physical strength. Excited, Leon exclaimed with joy, "This is it. This is what I was looking for." The next morning, at Silver Dragon Castle, Leon told Noah that the test she had taken had been corrected, and the full score was 100. He asked her to guess how much she had scored. Noah, thinking for a moment, guessed 50 points. Leon then cheerfully showed her the test paper, announcing that she had scored 62 points, higher than she expected. Noah looked at the test paper with a small pout, her face serious. Clenching her little fists with determination, she remained silent, offering no response to her marks. Leon, noticing her silence, wondered if she was dissatisfied with her score. Realizing it, he thought to himself, "This kid has high standards for herself." Noah, taking the test paper into her hands, intensely studied it. Watching her, Leon thought that Noah should be playing carefree like Moon, but instead she took the initiative to go to school and study. With a caring smile, he gently patted Noah's head, telling her that scoring 62 points on her first try was pretty impressive. Noah, surprised by her father's affection, blushed slightly and slowly thanked him for his encouragement. Leon then shifted the focus, saying, "Next, let's focus on the mistakes." As he spoke, Leon coughed repeatedly, several times, and apologized to Noah for it. Holding his throat, Leon thought to himself that, in an effort to stay awake and cheer himself up, he had eaten a few more chili peppers than he should have last night. He wondered if the excess chili was the reason his throat felt itchy now. Seeing him cough, Noah remembered her mother's words. Ross Weiss had told her that Leon stayed up late making a study plan for her. Although he might seem unreliable at times, he was still a top student. She also mentioned that Leon had eaten the Dragon Clan's extra spicy yellow pepper to keep himself awake, so it wasn't surprising that his throat was sore. Calmly, Noah reached into her pocket and took out a small box, handing it to Leon and saying, "For you." Surprised, Leon opened the box and asked if it was really for him. Noah revealed that it was actually their mom who had given it to her for him. Leon, taking out a lozenge or some medicine to soothe his throat, smiled and told Noah to thank her mother for him. As he placed the remedy in his mouth, Leon internally reflected that Noah was just like Ross Weiss, cold and reserved on the outside, but not very good at expressing kindness directly. Feeling better, Leon cheerfully said, "All right, let's continue learning." Noah, with a cute and determined expression, agreed. In that moment, the bond between father and daughter grew just a little closer. While it wasn't fully developed yet, it was definitely progressing. The story felt incomplete without Moon in this chapter, so let's add her for satisfaction. Leon, Moon, and Noah sat down to study. Leon taught Moon the basics, guiding her through the material. After that, he gave Noah an assignment to work on. Once his teaching session with Moon was over, Leon found himself in the kitchen of the Silver Dragon Castle, with various containers and medicinal herbs placed on the kitchen table. Two dragon maids knocked on the door and then walked into the kitchen, holding a pile of medicinal herbs in their hands. Some in bags, some in bowls, some in bowls, some brown and some green. "Your Majesty, all the medicinal herbs you requested have been gathered," they said. Leon, dressed in a pharmaceutical-related outfit with gloves on his hands, placed a book about medicinal herbs in front of him. Smiling at them, he gestured for them to place all the medicinal herbs on the table. "Okay, put them all here," he said. After placing the medicinal herbs on the table, the maids left the kitchen. Leon silently muttered in his heart, "I specifically asked them to bring more unrelated medicinal herbs so that they won't guess what I'm going to do." After the maids left, the kitchen became quiet, and Leon could focus on refining the medicine. Supporting his chin with his hand, he furrowed his brow slightly and stared silently at the medicinal herbs in front of him, pondering the details of refining the black dragon bolus mentioned in the book. The ingredients required to prepare the black dragon bolus are quite common, and the refining process doesn't seem too complicated. But why does it say that even the most skilled dragon pharmacists have a very low success rate in producing black dragon bolus? Leon shook his head and thought to himself, "No matter what, I must make the black dragon bolus today. This kind of medicinal herb refining is definitely not difficult for me as the top student in the academy." Without delay, Leon searched for the method of refining medicine in the book. Rolling up his sleeves, he looked at the steps while putting the relevant herbs into a bowl-shaped container to grind. First, crush and mix the medicinal herbs to be used. Then, put these herbs in the pot in order and boil them, he read aloud. Leon poured the ground powder into the boiling pot of medicine, then kept stirring it with a medicine spoon in his right hand. He repeated this process many times over and over again. Unfortunately, a few hours later, Leon was still unable to refine the black dragon bolus. Leon looked at the bottles of different colored medicines and crystals on the table and felt a deep sense of despair. He covered his head with his hand and let out a sigh. It's really not that easy," he muttered. He picked up a bottle of purple potion and shook it, looking at it with confusion on his face. "I followed the method in the book several times, but each time I fail in the final step of medicinal purification and separation." There were two reagent bottles in front of Leon. The reagent bottle on the left had been refined into blue crystals, while the reagent bottle on the right was still in the form of a purple liquid without any reaction. Leon muttered about the knowledge in the book, recalling the high-temperature separation method described within. He noted that too high a temperature could cause the medicine to become inactive, while too low a temperature wouldn't refine it properly. Shaking the reagent bottle with his hand, Leon frowned and seriously considered a solution for medicine purification and separation. "I can't achieve the separation effect just by manually shaking it. I need to use professional instruments." Perhaps due to the prolonged shaking, Leon's right hand began to feel uncomfortable. He used his left hand to pinch his right wrist to make himself feel better. "The master often says that if you can't go one way, you should look at other ways," Leon muttered. "What other effective ways are there to separate medicinal drugs?" Suddenly, dark clouds gathered outside the window. Thunder echoed in the sky, and a bolt of lightning struck. It looked like it was going to rain. The loud thunder and dazzling lightning caught Leon's attention. He sat in the chair, shaking the reagent bottle while turning his head to look out the window. Thunder. Is it going to rain later? He wondered, worried that rainwater might spill into the room. Leon put down the medicine bottle and walked to the window to close it. At that moment, he stared at the lightning outside and listened to the thunder. As if struck by inspiration, he muttered to himself, "Lightning." Leon attempted to combine thunder and lightning with the medicine refining process. Suddenly, he recalled something relevant he had learned at the academy. Thunder. I remember, in an alchemy class, the teacher once said that electrolytic impurities, sometimes have a higher success rate than fire roasting. Leon walked quickly back to the table and looked at the unresponsive purple medicine. He decided to try using the magic he had learned to purify and separate the medicine. Perhaps I can try using the thunder element that wasn't mentioned in this book to extract it, he thought. I am best at thunder elemental metal magic. Even though my magic hasn't fully recovered, it is more than adequate for this kind of subtle maneuvering. Leon placed his hand under the medicine bottle and cast thunder elemental magic on it. The liquid in the bottle reacted to the magic, boiling and creating bubbles. With Leon's efforts, half an hour later, medicine in the bottle finally formed into a bolus. He carefully examined the medicine bolus and exclaimed in surprise, "Success!" Leon put the medicine bolus into a small box he carried with him. Looking at the black dragon bolus he had painstakingly crafted, Leon couldn't help but smile to himself. The medicine of the dragon clan is quite easy to make, he said, completely immersed in the joy of his achievement. Unbeknownst to him, Moon had already opened the door and entered the kitchen. What a great thing, Leon thought to himself, humming a happy tune. Suddenly Moon's voice sounded from beside the table. "Dad, what are you doing?" She stood on tiptoe, grabbed the edge of the table, and looked curiously at her father's smiling face with big, watery eyes. Leon immediately felt something was wrong. He looked at Moon, who had been in the kitchen for some time, and was momentarily stunned. The air suddenly became quiet for a few seconds. When Leon fixed his eyes on Moon, he was so startled that he shouted loudly and almost fell in front of her. "Wow, Moon!" Leon, who had barely stabilized his body, quickly closed the box in his hand to prevent Moon from seeing the bolus inside. Nervously, he reached out and touched her head. "It's nothing," he said. However, Moon had already seen what was inside the box. She couldn't let go of her curiosity and continued to ask, "Is that sugar in Dad's hand?" Leon decided to fabricate a white lie to make Moon stop asking about the box's contents. Smiling, he shook the box in his hand. "This is medicine that Dad made for Mom," he said. As soon as Moon heard that it was medicine for her mom, she clenched her small fists, slightly lowered her eyebrows, and revealed concern for her mother. "Is this medicine for Mom? Is Mom sick?" Leon shook his head and softly explained while quietly putting the box into his pocket. "I noticed that your mom has been working too hard lately, so I'm giving her some health supplements. Don't worry." In truth, this medicine wasn't meant for Ross Weiss. It was made for him to take himself. Moon looked up at Leon and nodded, seeming to understand her father's intention. She reached out her hand and looked firmly at Leon, making an agreement with him. "Dad, you must take good care of Mom." Leon smiled, looked at Muon gently, and held her hand. "Of course, this is what Dad should do," he said. In fact, Muon didn't know that. At this moment, Leon was secretly laughing mischievously in his heart and had already made a plan to get back at Roswies. "When my body recovers, I must get back at her," he thought. At this point, the rain still showed no signs of abating. The weather outside was stormy, with thunder and lightning. The rain was very heavy, as if it were about to engulf the entire castle. After returning Muon to her room, Leon also went back to his own. The heavy rain outside reflected his turmoil. He lay in bed, tossing the box containing the black dragon bolus in his hand without intending to eat it immediately. Although the black dragon bolus has been refined, I don't know if the nutritional supplements of the dragon clan will have negative effects on a human, he thought. He grabbed the box that was about to fall, his expression slightly hesitant, as if he still hadn't made up his mind. Maybe I should just set it aside for now. Just as Leon was pondering whether to take the bolus or not, there was a knock on the door. He noticed the sound and looked up toward the door with some doubt in his heart. Could anyone else be coming over at this hour? After the knocking, someone immediately opened the door and came in. This person was none other than Roswys. Leon sat up in shock when he saw that it was Roswys walking in. He awkwardly smiled at her. "Your Majesty, why are you here?" Roswys had a kind smile on her face, indicating that she was not here to cause trouble for Leon this time. She wagged her tail, slowed her tone, and spoke to Leon about the purpose of her visit. "I hear from Yuan that you made me a medicine that looks like chocolate candy to regulate my body," she said. Leon heard that it was Muon who had told Roswys about his medicine making and was momentarily speechless, unsure of what to say. He turned his head away, looking a little nervous. He didn't dare to face Roswys directly. Leon quietly thought to himself, "I'm still losing out to my daughter's naivety. My cute daughter leaks the news so quickly." Leon nervously stayed still, watching as Roswys approached his bed, step by step. However, she said she had no other purpose. "Don't be nervous. I'm not here to question you or anything. I'm just surprised that you can refine medicine in such a rudimentary environment," Roswys said. Her face showed an expression of interest in the refined medicine. She approached Leon and reached out to him, seemingly wanting to see what his medicine bolus looked like. "What have you refined? Can you show me?" Leon still looked at her nervously, but faced with her questioning, he couldn't resist. He sighed, thinking he couldn't hide it anymore. Leon obediently handed the box in his hand to Roswys. "Even if I say no, you'll still use violent means to snatch it away," he muttered. Roswys opened the box and carefully examined the black dragon bolus inside. The medicine bolus was flawless and glossy. A hint of surprise appeared on Roswys's face, as she was quite satisfied with Leon's ability to refine such a high-quality bolus. "Not bad. To be able to make a black dragon bolus with such a perfect color under these conditions. You're really impressive. Really impressive. Really impressive, Leon," she said. After commenting on Leon's bolus, Roswys complimented him in a rare show of praise. "How does that saying go? Something about being skilled in both the pen and the sword?" The Silver Dragon Queen, who usually didn't praise him much, rarely expressed approval. Her compliment today left Leon a little surprised. He froze for a moment as he looked at her. Did she actually not mock me? Suddenly, Roswys's expression became serious, as if she were about to say something very important. She closed the box and threw it back to Leon. "You can keep it, but you can't take this medicine now." Leon steadily caught the box. He raised an eyebrow and looked at Roswys with confusion, obviously not understanding what she meant. "Huh? Why?" Roswys's expression turned serious, the kind of sternness she usually displayed with Leon. Her tone wasn't very friendly. She looked down at Leon condescendingly, propping her hands under her plump chest as she explained. "Medicine for the Dragon Clan has efficacy too strong for the human body." Leon still didn't understand the seriousness of Roswys's words. He frowned and looked up at her, thinking she was underestimating him. "I won't be able to bear it." Roswys raised an eyebrow and gave Leon a disdainful look, her lips curving into a provocative smile. "I kindly remind you, as a human, you can't withstand its power." Her words made Leon feel unsatisfied. His expression became serious, showing disbelief at her warning. "What about the power of dragons? I've already defeated countless giant dragons. How could I not bear a small bolus?" Leon insisted on proving to Roswys that he could withstand the power of the Dragon Clan. He picked up the black dragon bolus and gathered the courage to swallow it in one gulp. Roswitha, "Don't underestimate me. Courage is a hymn of humanity." Leon looked at Roswitha with an expression of determination, showing the fearless resolve of a warrior heading into battle. Roswitha reached out her hand to stop him, but it was already too late. The medicine bolus had been swallowed by Leon. She looked at Leon angrily but couldn't bring herself to say anything. Suddenly, Leon widened his eyes as his body felt like it was on fire. A powerful force was gathering inside him. It was clear that the black dragon bolus had started to take effect. His skin slowly turned red as he knelt on the bed in great discomfort, one hand supporting himself on the bed and the other gripping his chest, looking visibly pained. Roswitha's expression turned worried, and she seemed at a loss for what to do in his current state. "Bastard! I haven't used much healing magic before," she muttered, cursing Leon for being so impulsive while using her hands to cast healing magic on his stomach. "How do you feel now? I'll try to break down the effect of the bolus for you first." Leon didn't answer her question. He gritted his teeth, and Roswitha couldn't see his expression clearly. Just as she was about to continue casting her healing magic, Leon suddenly reached out and grabbed her hand, interrupting her. Roswitha was startled by his action and looked at him with a serious expression. "Ah, don't move," she said. Leon slowly lifted his head, his face drenched in sweat. He looked at Roswitha with a resolute expression and said, "Just watch, Silver Dragon Queen. This is the courage and determination of humanity." Lightning bolts began to form around him as the power of the bolus surged within him. Under its influence, a miracle seemed to be unfolding in Leon's body. The thunder and lightning didn't last long, and soon they disappeared entirely. Leon fainted, closing his eyes and feeling weak. He leaned forward and was about to fall off the bed when Roswitha quickly stepped in. She caught him before he hit the ground, holding him to prevent him from falling. Roswitha looked at Leon nervously, afraid something serious might happen to him. Leon's eyes remained shut, and his expression revealed discomfort. Roswitha gently placed her hand under his head and body, laying him back on the bed with movements as gentle as water, as though caring for an injured husband. After settling him, Roswitha whispered, "He's really crazy. No one could tell if she was cursing him or praising him." Roswitha stood beside Leon for a while, observing him. Seeing no change in his condition, she sighed and turned to leave his room to find a doctor. "You wait here. I'll go find the palace physician," she said as she walked toward the door. Just as she was leaving, Leon slowly opened his eyes. His face was flushed, resembling someone who had just gotten drunk. Sensing Roswitha's departure, he suddenly reached out and grabbed something behind her. Roswitha turned around, startled, to see Leon holding her tail with a silly smile on his face. She was surprised and slightly annoyed. Leon wagged her tail gently, looking at her with childlike delight. Although Roswitha didn't understand what was wrong with him, she was angry at his behavior. "How dare you?" she began, but Leon didn't seem to notice her displeasure. He continued holding her tail, rubbing it with a happy expression. His earlier handsome and resolute demeanor had vanished entirely. Leon looked at Roswitha and softly muttered, "Wife, where are you going?" Hearing this, Roswitha's expression shifted from anger to surprise, her face turning bright red. She nervously replied, "Who is your wife?" Despite her objection, Leon held her tail tightly, refusing to let go. Roswitha tried to push his face away and pull her tail back. "Hurry up and let go of me," she demanded. But Leon seemed to enjoy holding her tail too much and didn't let go. He giggled like a child who had just received a new toy, saying, "I don't want to let go. I won't want to let my wife leave." Roswitha and Leon struggled over her tail for a while. Despite her efforts, Leon clung to it with a silly grin, muttering, "Wife, my wife," trying to reason with him. She sighed and turned her head, feeling speechless as she silently pondered his current condition. The effect of the black dragon bolus should only have been to strengthen the body. There shouldn't have been such symptoms of mental confusion. Could it be that the magic of the thunder element earlier had altered the effect of the medicine? However, with his current idiotic appearance, his life didn't seem to be in danger for the time being. Rosa looked back at the silly Leon and inadvertently let out a long breath. Compared to his usual self, Rosa even found him a bit cute now. Her face quietly reddened again because of him. Leon obviously liked Rosa's tail very much. He rubbed against it, showing no intention of stopping, and continued to call her wife repeatedly. Pretending to be impatient but with a slight blush on her face, Rosa replied with a relaxed and cheerful expression. "Oh, okay. I'm here. What's wrong? Tell me quickly." At this moment, she didn't know what astonishing words Leon was going to say next. Upon hearing Ross's response, Leon looked particularly happy, assuming she was willing to listen. He gazed at her with an innocent expression, like a child asking for candy. In a playful yet earnest tone, he said, "I want 2 births, my wife." Rosa was once again shocked by Leon's words. Her reaction this time was even stronger than when he first called her wife. She widened her eyes and slightly opened her mouth, unsure how to reply. The blush that had barely faded returned instantly, coloring her face as red as an apple. She didn't understand his unreasonable demand and cursed Leon angrily. Her face still flushed. "You haven't even taken care of the twins of one bird and you're already talking about 2 births. Don't overthink it," she snapped. Leon, clearly not thrilled with her response, rolled from side to side on the bed, hugging her tail tightly. Reluctance was written all over his face like a child mid-tantrum. "I want 2 births. I want 2 births. I want 2 births. Is it okay?" he whined, his tone as insistent as ever. Rosa stared at him, utterly exasperated. She covered her forehead with one hand, lowered her eyebrows, and squeezed her eyes shut, her face a picture of helplessness. Inwardly, she sighed, trying to figure out how to handle the situation without making it worse. Better to play along than to argue, she thought. The rain outside pelted against the windows, the crisp sound adding a fitting soundtrack to their ridiculous exchange. Rosa opened her eyes, glanced at Leon with a speechless expression, and finally gave in. Okay, she said with exaggerated calm. "Not just 2 births. We'll go for 3, 4, or maybe even 5 kids." Leon's face lit up instantly, his mood shifting as if someone had handed him his favorite treats. He nodded enthusiastically, chuckling in delight. Just as Rosa began to relax, thinking she had handled the situation, Leon sprang up with a new request. "Then you have to come back to my hometown with me," he said. Her patience, already stretched thin, was about to snap. He waved a hand dismissively and grumbled, Fine. When we're settled, we'll go back. Happy now." That seemed to do the trick. Leon finally released her tail and jumped up, raising his hands in triumph. He danced around the room like an overjoyed child who had just been promised candy. Watching his antics, Rosa couldn't help but relax a little. A faint smile tugged at her lips. "He's so annoying when he acts like this," she thought, "but at least he's easy to please." Just as she began to enjoy the quiet moment, Leon suddenly leaned in close, his cheerful grin widening. "Wife, you're the best," he declared, puckering his lips and attempting to give her a kiss. Rosa blinked, stunned by his sudden move. When she realized what he was about to do, her instincts kicked in. She shoved her hands against his face, stopping him mid-pout. "You dare try to take advantage of me, you idiot." Leon gasped dramatically, as if she'd just broken his heart. "Wife, how could you?" he whined, his voice full of exaggerated hurt. Despite her hands holding him back, he still tried to wiggle closer, his determination bordering on absurd. "Why hasn't this fool woken up yet?" Rosa muttered under her breath, her patience hanging by a thread. Without thinking, she snapped. Her fist flew, landing squarely on Leon's face. "When is this medicine gonna wear off?" she growled, her voice filled with frustration. Leon let out a muffled groan and sat back, clutching his face in surprise. He knelt on the bed, looking like a wounded puppy, his head bowed in grievance. Rosa immediately regretted her outburst. She pulled back her fist, guilt creeping into her expression. I couldn't stop myself," she mumbled. To make amends, she reached out and gently rubbed his back. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with concern. Leon didn't respond at first, his face hidden behind his hands. But then, he suddenly clutched his chest. His breathing quickened, his face flushed an even deeper red, and his body began to tremble. "Wife, I feel strange," he murmured, his voice barely audible. Rosa froze, her eyes widening as she noticed a faint glow emanating from the dragon pattern on his chest. The intricate design now pulsed with a dazzling purple light, casting an eerie glow across the room. "My God!" she whispered. Staring at the glow in disbelief, she knew this wasn't just some random occurrence. The glow was a sign that something was happening to both of them. She turned to Leon, whose chest now mirrored her own, the same purple light radiating from his dragon pattern. He clutched his shirt tightly, panting as if trying to catch his breath. "What's going on?" she whispered, her voice trembling with equal parts fear and curiosity. Leon, still dazed and clearly uncomfortable, looked up at her with pleading eyes. "Wife, I don't feel right," he murmured. Just like that, Rosa realized the night was far from over. At this moment, Leon lay on the bed, still dizzy and unaware of what was happening to his body. Rosa quickly climbed onto the bed, her movements swift and determined, and began to peel off Leon's clothes. As she expected, the dragon pattern on his chest was glowing with an intense purple light. Leon, however, seemed oblivious. His consciousness was still in a daze, and he hadn't done anything to trigger this sudden activation. Rosa stared at the glowing dragon pattern, puzzled. "Why is this happening now?" she thought. Suddenly, Leon pressed down on Rosa's shoulders and, with surprising energy, pounced on her. She let out a startled gasp, feeling uncomfortable as she was pinned beneath him. Struggling against his grip, she glared up at him, her tone full of exasperation. "Leon, you bastard! What do you think you're doing?" Leon, however, didn't seem to care. With a pitiful expression and a voice tinged with discomfort, he whimpered, "I feel really uncomfortable, my wife." He sat up slightly, his eyebrows furrowing as he clutched his chest. His face carried a mix of grievance and helplessness. "I feel hot all over, and my chest itches," he complained, looking at her with eyes that begged for understanding. Rosa felt her frustration growing, her emotions a confusing mix of shyness and anger. She began analyzing his condition, realizing the glowing dragon pattern was mixed with the thunder element. This was amplifying Leon's already intense energy, and, unfortunately for her, his desires as well. Just as she was deep in thought, Leon leaned into her chest and began affectionately kissing her tail. His voice was soft but full of adoration. "My wife's tail is so fragrant. I love her tail the most." Rosa's patience snapped. She immediately recalled the last time his dragon pattern activated and how chaotic it had been. The memory alone was enough to make her physically and mentally exhausted. Determined not to let things spiral out of control again, she reached out and pushed his face away. "My tail drags on the ground all day," she exclaimed, her tone filled with indignation. "Don't you think it's dirty? Stop putting it in your mouth and get off me already." Despite her efforts, Leon seemed undeterred. Even with her hand firmly planted on his face, he still tried to grab her hand, his persistence as unyielding as ever. Just as Rosa was about to push him harder, Leon's index finger gently pressed against her lips. The sudden action caught her off guard, making her pause. She stared at him in surprise. Leon's goofy expression was gone. His eyes were serious and unwavering as he looked down at her. In a low, husky voice, he said, "Wife, you look so beautiful tonight." Rosa's breath hitched, her face growing hot with embarrassment. She turned her head slightly to hide her flushed cheeks and murmured softly, "Even if you say that." Something about his demeanor had changed entirely. Leon no longer seemed like the fumbling, overzealous man she'd been wrestling with moments ago. Instead, he exuded a magnetic confidence that left her momentarily speechless. What is going on with him? She wondered, her heart beating faster. Why does he suddenly seem so irresistible? Leon's gaze remained locked on hers, his voice tender yet firm. "My dear, you can help me, right?" Rosa blinked, her resolve wavering under his unrelenting charm. The look in his eyes made it impossible to refuse. Against her better judgment, she sighed and nodded. "Okay then, but only tonight." The space between them disappeared as their bodies intertwined, the air thick with undeniable tension. The howling wind and rain outside the window became a backdrop to their shared moment, muffling the sounds of their entanglement. Now it was the morning of the second day. The rainstorm that had raged through the night had cleared, leaving behind a crisp, sunny sky that bathed the Silver Dragon Castle in warm light. Leon stirred from his slumber, blinking in a daze as he tried to make sense of the blurry world in front of him. Slowly, his vision cleared, and his eyes widened when he realized he wasn't alone. "Are you awake?" Rosa asked, staring at him with amusement as she lay next to him. Her tone was soft, but her eyes sparkled with mischief. Leon shot upright, his mouth agape. "Why are you here?" he blurted, only to wince as a wave of soreness washed over his body. He rubbed his arms and muttered, "Why does my whole body hurt so much?" Still piecing together the events of the night before, he looked at Rosa in confusion. "My memory is a bit fragmented. What happened?" Rosa sat up gracefully, pulling the blanket over herself. "Don't you remember?" she teased, turning slightly to show her back. Leon's jaw dropped as he saw her skin, decorated with kiss marks of various sizes. "Did I do all that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Rosa's teasing smile grew wider. "Oh, you shouldn't forget, Dragon Slayer," she said, her tone dripping with playful mockery. She pointed out the marks on her back, chest, and waist. Leon's mind raced, recalling flashes of last night, embarrassing poses and passionate moments. Moments that he had thought impossible for himself flashed through Leon's mind. His face turned crimson as he clasped his head in his hands. "Oh, no," he groaned. "What have I done?" Rosa, enjoying his discomfort, mimicked his pleading tone from the night before. "Darling, let's do it one last time, please. I'm so uncomfortable. Just this once, for the last time." Leon shot her a mortified look. "Stop. Don't say it again. I remember everything," he exclaimed, waving his hands to silence her. Rosa chuckled, clearly savoring his embarrassment as she began dressing calmly. Her queenly demeanor remained unfazed. Leon, still reeling, muttered to himself, "I only refined the black dragon bullets to heal my body, not whatever this was. I didn't expect the effects to be so exaggerated." Finally summoning his courage, he looked at Rosa with a sheepish expression. "I admit I went too far last night. Did I hurt you?" Rosa tilted her head as she finished buttoning her tunic. With a calm yet regal air, she replied, "It's all right." Leon, emboldened by her response, crossed his arms over his chest and smirked. "Well, at least now you know my body is just as strong as ever. Next time, don't go saying I've lost my edge." Rosa's gaze sharpened. She moved closer, her eyes locking onto his in a way that made him instantly nervous. "What's wrong?" he stammered, taken aback by her intensity. She reached out, gripping his chin firmly as she examined his face. Her teasing smile returned as she whispered, "I'm very satisfied with your performance last night. Dragon Slayer, I hope you can keep it up in the future." Leon's heart skipped a beat as she pushed him back and withdrew her hand. He blinked, shocked by her words. "Have I become her personal plaything?" he thought, feeling both flustered and unsure of his newfound role. Rosa sat down on the bed, her expression thoughtful. She suddenly remembered something. A bet Leon had mentioned when they were walking in the garden. She turned to him with a sly smile, ready to revisit the topic. By the way, Rossa spoke, her tone casual yet carrying an underlying tension. About that bet you mentioned earlier, regarding the change in address. Leon, still tidying up his clothes, looked up at her. Rossa noticed his movements and quickly turned her head, her cheeks flushing with reluctance. She hesitated for a moment before speaking again. You win. Have you decided on your demands? It was clear that Rossa still struggled to admit that Leon had triumphed. This, in turn, proved that the change in how she addressed him had brought them closer, especially in her relationship with her daughters. Leon scratched his head sheepishly, slightly embarrassed. Oh, I've already thought of that, he said, his voice growing sincere. I'd like you to send someone to visit my master and his wife in the Empire. Leon hadn't seen his master or his master's wife in a long time. Might not even know that he had gone missing, and he missed them greatly. Rossa paused for a moment, visibly moved by his request. She lowered her gaze, placing her hand thoughtfully on her chin as she considered. To enter human territory wasn't without risks, but while silver dragons were not skilled in infiltration, visiting people wasn't beyond her capabilities. Leon's face lit up with happiness when he realized that Rossa could fulfill his request. Thank you, he said, his excitement evident. But then, realizing that expressing his gratitude too directly might not be well received by someone as dignified as the Silver Dragon Queen, he coughed twice, adopting a more formal tone. I'd be grateful for your help. Later that morning, Leon found himself in the garden of Silver Dragon Castle, surrounded by vibrant flowers and fresh, tender grass bathed in the sun. After changing into a new outfit, he sat at a stone table, feeling slightly tired from the previous night's events. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, attempting to rest. Muen, who had been playing with toys nearby, noticed Leon's discomfort. She looked at him with concern. Dad, are you sick? Hearing Muen's question, Leon immediately sat up straighter, not wanting her to think something was wrong. I'm not sick, he replied quickly. Why do you ask? Muen stood up, crossing her arms, and giving him a knowing look as she shook her finger at him. Hey, Mom already told me everything. You took that medicine yourself yesterday. Dad's a man. Men can't be sick. Leon was momentarily speechless. He hadn't expected Rossa to tell Muen about the bullets. Gritting his teeth, he inwardly cursed Rossa, embarrassed that she would share such details with a child. Muen looked at him, her concern evident. Dad hasn't recovered. Is the medicine not strong enough, or did you not take enough? Her innocent questioning, combined with the memory of what had happened the night before, felt like a dagger to Leon's chest. He managed a strained smile. Muen, it's really impolite to ask about those things. Suddenly, Muen's eyes widened, and she gasped. Dad, please don't die, she cried. Leon, taken aback by her misunderstanding, gently touched her head, trying to reassure her. Dad's fine, don't worry, he said, trying to calm her. In his mind, he couldn't help but draw a comparison between Muen and Rossa. Both were direct, unafraid to speak their minds, and sometimes a little too blunt. To cheer Muen up, Leon squatted down and suggested an idea that had just come to him. How about I make you a new toy today? Muen's face lit up with excitement. A toy? Yes, I love toys, Muen exclaimed. Leon smiled as he gathered some wood and gear parts. He cut the wood into small squares and assembled the pieces into a larger cube, painting each side a different color. After the paint dried, he handed the cube to Muen. Here, try this. It's a Rubik's Cube. You can twist it freely. Muen eagerly grabbed the cube, excitedly twisting it in her hands. As she did, Leon silently observed her, a proud smile crossing his face. I used to learn about mechanical linkages in alchemy machinery class at school. Who knew I'd be using that knowledge to make toys for my daughter? Maybe I'm a natural at this parenting thing, he thought to himself. Just then, Leon felt something was off behind him. He quickly turned around but found no one there. Muan, noticing his sudden movement, looked up and asked, "Dad, what's wrong?" Leon continued scanning the garden, trying to sense if anything was out of place, but there was nothing. He shrugged it off, replying, "It's nothing." Yet years of dragon slaying experience told him otherwise. There was indeed a dragon nearby, and Leon realized it was Noah, who was likely doing her physical training in the area. Leon thought for a moment. She won't come to join us willingly, but I'll make a Rubik's Cube for her too. That evening, after Muan had gone to bed, Noah returned to her bedroom. As she passed the table, she noticed the Rubik's Cube with a note addressed to her. She picked it up and scoffed. "Idiot! I'm not interested in this child's toy," she muttered. But despite her words, she twisted the cube, restoring it to its original state. As the colors lined up, a small, slow smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered under her breath. Meanwhile, Muan had been watching Noah's every move, curious about the changes she had noticed in her lately. One day, Muan, feeling like a detective, decided to investigate Noah's secret treasure chest hidden under the bed. When she opened it, she found a few things: fragments of Leon's black gold armor, the Rubik's Cube Leon had given Noah, and a note from Leon to her. "Everything in here is related to Dad," Muan thought to herself as she nodded, as if the pieces of the puzzle had finally clicked into place. Just as she was about to close the box, a familiar figure appeared behind her. It was Noah. Calmly, she took the box from Muan's hands and closed it. "You're not allowed to peek," Noah said, her voice firm but not unkind. Muan, looking a bit sheepish but still determined, smiled at Noah. "A good child shouldn't rummage through other people's things." The academy that Noah is attending is called St. Heath Academy. St. Heath Academy is a noble institution among the Dragon Clan and has strict standards for the students it recruits. Family is an important part of the assessment criteria. St. Heath Academy believes that, whether a dragon is born through asexual reproduction or a couple's normal fetal reproduction, only in a harmonious, loving family that espouses the ideals of the Dragon Clan can they be nurtured into a qualified young dragon. The Academy admits only such students. To create the illusion of a harmonious and loving dragon family, the Silver Dragon Queen decided to take the whole family on a trip and have a family photo taken together. Their destination was a city located in the sky called Sky City. Sky City boasts beautiful scenery, with an azure sky enveloping the city. There were also many dragons flying near Sky City. Roswitha found an open area to land and set Leon and the daughters down. After Leon picked up Noah, Muan came next. Muan slid down from Roswitha's back as if she were on a slide. She seemed to particularly enjoy this process. Leon reached out and prepared to hold her. "Slow down. I'll hold you," he said. After being steadily picked up by Leon, Muan waved her hands happily with a smile on her face. She innocently asked Leon, Dad, why didn't you change into a dragon just now? Muan wants to see Dad turn into a dragon." Leon was caught off guard by her question. He smiled a little sheepishly and muttered to himself, "My dear daughter, I'm quite skilled at slaying dragons. But as for transforming into one..." Noah appeared and saw that Leon was avoiding the question. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and stood behind him, speaking softly. "Are you unable to transform into a dragon?" Leon broke out into a cold sweat at Noah's words. Her serious gaze and Muan's innocent gaze converged on him. Leon looked at his daughter's curious expression and was somewhat at a loss. There was no other choice but to look at Roswitha with a pleading expression. At this moment, Roswitha had already transformed into her human form and walked toward them. She looked at them with a smile and calmly explained to her daughters, "Your father's body has not fully recovered yet, and he cannot transform into a dragon form at the moment. When he recovers, he will show you." Leon almost thought he was going to expose his identity. He was quietly relieved by Roswitha's help. Muen gently clenched her hands and looked at Leon with anticipation. "Dad, you must recover quickly," she said. With a helpless look on his face, Leon responded softly to Muen's words. "I will try my best." Subsequently, Leon silently denied the situation in his heart, although it was impossible. The azure sky set off the huge gate of Sky City in front of them. The area around the gate was filled with dragon people who had come here to play or were local dragons. Roswitha urged them forward. "All right, hurry into the city. There's still something to do today," Roswitha said softly. She held Noah's hand while Leon held Muen's. The four of them entered Sky City together. As they stepped onto the streets of Sky City, Muen couldn't wait to look around. She ran ahead excitedly, her eyes filled with indescribable joy. "Wow, Noah, look! There are so many dragons!" Noah didn't seem interested in the people or things on the street. She calmly followed behind Muen, persuading her not to run too fast. "Slow down. Don't walk too fast." The people on the street were curious about the pair of cute little dragons that had suddenly appeared. Many turned to look at them with curious eyes. Only Leon and Roswitha stood out from the crowd. The two of them followed behind the children, coldly, not saying a word to each other. At this moment, Leon's walking pace slowed. He lowered his head, his body trembling uncontrollably. Roswitha noticed that Leon wasn't keeping up. She turned her head and noticed something was wrong with him. "Is this guy trembling? Well, should be the first time he has seen so many dragons since he woke up from a coma," she thought. Roswitha walked up to Leon and leaned in to mock him. "What's up? Are you scared?" Upon hearing Roswitha's question, Leon quickly lifted his head, an excited expression on his face. "Huh, scared, I'm excited," he exclaimed. He pointed his finger toward the different types of dragon people in the crowd, on the street, his voice revealing uncontrollable excitement. "First class merit. Second class merit. The streets are full of achievements. I'm going to get rich." The dragon people didn't understand what the man in front of them was doing, and looked at him with confusion. Roswitha felt helpless about Leon's reaction. She covered her face with her hands and silently complained in her heart, "I don't need to worry about him anymore." Leon walked ahead of Roswitha with happy steps and confidently laughed out loud. "Bring them all back, and I can exchange them for a lot of money in no time." Eventually, they arrived at the photo studio. The crisp bell rang, signaling that customers had entered. A middle-aged female dragon wearing glasses and a hat, along with a female dragon assistant, stood at the front desk. They bowed slightly to welcome them. "Welcome, Your Majesty." The environment of the photo studio was very beautiful, exuding an elegant atmosphere. The walls were filled with photos of various types of dragon people. The female dragon assistant guided them inward from the front. Muen led Noah, running ahead and curiously looking at the photos on the studio wall. "Noah, look. There are so many photos of dragons here." After arriving at the photo studio, Leon felt something strange. He approached Roswitha and whispered to her, "By the way, aren't you the Silver Dragon Queen? Why do you still have to come to the photo studio in person to take photos?" Roswitha turned to him and explained the purpose of her personal visit. "The Dragon King or Queen of a tribe can only command the people of their own tribe, but the dragons of Sky City do not belong to any tribe." Leon thought that the Silver Dragon Queen's abilities were limited and couldn't help but laugh at her. "So your status as a queen is a bit low," he teased. As the queen of the Silver Dragons, Roswitha didn't want to hear such words. She stomped hard on Leon's foot with her high heels. expressing her dissatisfaction. She walked in front of Leon, somewhat angrily. "Anyway, my status is higher than yours," she retorted. Leon stood behind, covering his foot with his hand and sucking in a breath of pain. Roswitha walked up to Selena, the manager of the photo studio, and struck up a pleasant conversation with her. Everyone says that Selena's photography skills are top-notch among the Dragon Clan. Being able to successfully book an appointment with you is also our family's luck, Roswitha said. Selena adjusted her glasses and replied, "It's an honor for our studio to take family photos for the Silver Dragon Queen." While chatting with Roswitha, Selena turned her head and noticed that Leon didn't have a tail. A little puzzled, she asked Roswitha, "Your Majesty, your husband's tail?" At this moment, Leon was focused on looking at the photos on the wall and didn't hear their conversation. Roswitha glanced in Leon's direction and made up an excuse to explain to Selena. "He doesn't like to show his tail. Please choose a tailored suit for him." In fact, to avoid suspicion from other dragon people, Roswitha had previously advised Leon to wear a fake dragon tail to pretend he was a dragon. However, Leon was unwilling to compromise. The curtain of the fitting room was pulled open, and Leon walked out from inside. He was wearing a white suit, and his hairstyle had been slightly styled by the assistant. He looked very handsome and spirited. Seeing such a handsome father, Muen's eyes sparkled and she couldn't help but praise him loudly. "Wow, Dad is so handsome." Selena was also amazed by Leon's current outfit. Her face turned slightly red as she expressed her thoughts to Leon. "King, this suit is very suitable for you. You must have been very popular before, right?" However, Leon looked at himself with confusion, as if he didn't realize he was as good-looking as everyone said. "Is that so? The last time I wore a suit was during my graduation ceremony at the academy." Leon then realized that Noah had not yet expressed her opinion. After tidying up his clothes, he looked up at Noah with a smile on his face. "What does Noah think?" Noah noticed Leon's gaze, and her face immediately turned red. She shyly turned her head and hesitantly commented on Leon's attire. "Well, it's so handsome." Leon was particularly happy to hear his daughters evaluate him like this. He bent down and reached out his hands to stroke their heads separately. "Your dresses are also very cute." Noah and Muen looked up at Leon together, expressing their delight at his evaluation. The curtain of another fitting room was also pulled open, and Roswitha walked elegantly out. She was wearing a black dress with purple accents on the inside, reflecting her aristocratic temperament. The slim-fit dress showcased Roswitha's excellent figure, and when she walked out of the fitting room, she exuded a sense of royalty and mystery. Muen couldn't help but praise Roswitha. "Mom is so beautiful." Leon was stunned to see such an elegant and beautiful Roswitha. His face quietly turned red without him knowing it. Roswitha noticed Leon's gaze and turned to glare at him. "What's up?" Leon turned his face away, scratched his head, and awkwardly replied to Roswitha, "No, it's quite suitable for you." Hearing Leon say that, Roswitha couldn't help but blush as well. Presumably, seeing that Leon's outfit highlighted his handsomeness, she turned her head and commented on Leon's attire. "I think it would be great if you had a tail." Leon was very dissatisfied with her proposal. He silently cursed in his heart. "Bah! I will never put on a tail in my life." Selena was already making the final adjustments to the camera. Noah and Muen were already standing in front of it. Muen waved her hand toward where Roswitha and Leon were standing, indicating for them to come over quickly. "Dad, Mom, come on!" After arranging where the four would stand, Selena provided guidance on their poses. Actions. Get ready to take photos. Your Majesty, King, please get closer. Roswitha and Leon were somewhat reluctant. They pulled away from each other slightly, not wanting to get too close. Smile. 3, 2, 1. Selena's voice. Several harmonious family photos slowly emerged on the camera. The first photo was of the four people. Roswitha and Leon stood behind their daughters with serious expressions on their faces. Moan raised one hand and made a cheerful gesture, looking very happy. Noah, held by Muon's hand, wore a calm expression on her face. The photo truly looked like a harmonious family. The second photo captured Noah and Muon. Muon happily hugged Noah, while Noah looked at the camera expressionlessly. This photo depicted the sisters as being very close. The third and fourth photos focused on Roswitha and Leon. In one, Roswitha and Leon leaned sideways against each other, blushing shyly while forming their hands into a heart shape for the camera. In the next, they faced each other, looking deeply into each other's eyes, resembling a couple in love. Selena felt warm inside when she saw these two very loving photos. They truly looked good together as a couple. The family photo shoot ended in a harmonious atmosphere. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, Leon graduated from the academy. By this time, Leon was surrounded by girls who admired him. "Leon, can we take a photo together? Can you have dinner with me? Please accept this gift." It seemed that Leon was very popular among girls. However, Leon, who didn't understand the true intentions of the girls, rejected them outright on the spot. "Please allow me to refuse. I have to go back and mail the hooves of my master's donkey." "Take a rain check," Leon said, bidding goodbye to the girls and walking away. The girls froze in place, their hearts breaking as soon as they heard his reply. Leon's master, who stood behind him, looked at his apprentice with a helpless expression on his face. "Did this guy get kicked in the head by a donkey?" he muttered. The photographer informed Roswitha and Leon that it would take around 6 hours to develop the photos. She encouraged them to explore the lively city, which was hosting a vibrant fair at the time. The children were thrilled at the prospect of fun and eagerly ran ahead, their faces glowing with joy. Leon turned to Roswitha and remarked, "I never thought we'd end up shopping together like this." With her usual cold tone, Roswitha responded, "We are doing this only to maintain the family image. Don't misunderstand." She reminded Leon of Noah's entrance exam, for which she had been preparing over the last month, ensuring she left nothing to chance. They noticed the girls watching a toy stall closely, particularly the shooting game. The girls had their eyes on the display, but Leon observed a young girl lose her chance to win a prize due to just a few missed shots. "I've never seen a game like this before," Leon remarked curiously. He explained that he had only seen people playing such games in human markets. The shopkeeper, noticing their interest, explained the rules with a sly smile. The game was rigged so that only someone who hit all the balloons with 10 consecutive shots could win. He made it appear easy, but had a trick up his sleeve. He adjusted the settings to make it nearly impossible for anyone to win. The girls, enamored with the dolls on display, couldn't tear their eyes away. Roswitha observed carefully and remarked, "This gun is driven by magical energy. The level of control it requires is quite complex, even for someone like Noah." The shopkeeper, trying to lure them, said confidently, "You can pop all the balloons with 10 consecutive shots. You'll win these beautiful dolls for your daughters." Although the girls shook their heads, denying their interest, Leon wasn't convinced. He could see through their polite refusal. Understanding that they didn't want to trouble him, Leon decided to win the dolls for them. He picked up the gun with great composure and requested the shopkeeper to sell some bullets for his wife so she could also try. Roswitha raised an eyebrow but stayed silent. Leon hadn't held a gun since his Dragon Slayer training at the academy, but his willpower silenced any doubts. His first shot went wide, causing the shopkeeper to grin in satisfaction. However, to the shopkeeper's shock, Leon managed to hit all 10 balloons in a row, winning the game effortlessly. The people around the stall started to gather in amazement as Leon claimed the dolls for his daughters. The crowd cheered, clapping their hands to acknowledge Leon's accuracy and skill. Even Rose, who always kept calm, could not help but be impressed. The shopkeeper, however, was angry, grinding his teeth as he handed the dolls to Leon's two daughters, mumbling to himself. Leon thanked the shopkeeper for the dolls, and the girls were ecstatic, their faces glowing as they held the dolls close to their chests. Rose observed Leon keenly. Despite his otherwise low-key demeanor, he still managed to retain a special charm when it mattered most. Leon grinned at how happy the girls were, but when he glanced at Rose, she was gazing at him in a trance. She hastily looked away when their eyes met. Leon, however, wasn't finished. One of the girls passing by with her mother asked for the same teddy bear that Rose was holding, which sat on the highest shelf. Leon noticed the giant teddy bear that could more or less fit Rose in its shape. Without hesitation, he picked up the gun once again. With another perfect series of shots, he popped 10 more balloons and won the bear. Triumphantly, he handed it to Rose with a grin. Rose, holding the large bear, was speechless for a moment. Her cheeks turned tomato red as she mumbled under her breath, "If I were in charge, I'd tell everyone not to play this rigged game at all." Leon chuckled at her statement. "It's all right. Everyone's just having fun with the game. If you don't like the toy, then hand it over to me. I thought I couldn't let you leave empty-handed," he teased, his mocking tone flustering Rose further. "I never said that," she quickly replied. Despite being a practical-minded woman, she found herself surprisingly fond of the giant bear. Bears aren't even pleasant to eat properly, Rose mused to herself. But as toys, they're strangely endearing. As they turned to leave, Rose addressed Leon. "I'll be waiting for you in my room. Don't forget to come over." Leon froze at her words. As they returned to the castle, his mind reeled. Back in his room, he paced around in an agitated state, unable to think of anything else but the reality that Rose had called him to her chamber. "Something is definitely going to happen," he whispered to himself, trying to calm down. The prospect of what lay ahead filled him with both dread and anticipation. He was frustrated and torn. If he went to Rose's room, he knew the night would be uncomfortable. But if he didn't go, he'd feel uneasy for the entire week. Finally, he made up his mind and decided to face her. As he approached her room, he noticed the door was slightly ajar. Hesitantly, he stepped in and glanced around, his thoughts racing. Is she actually taking a shower? He wondered nervously. His gaze fell on the frosted glass of the bathroom door, where he could vaguely make out her silhouette. The poor quality of the glass prevented him from seeing clearly, but it was enough to make him panic. Leon's heartbeat quickened. "Can I really do this tonight?" he asked himself. He tried to steady his breathing and think logically. At that moment, the bathroom door swung open, and out stepped Rose, wearing a short, pinkish nightdress. The garment's sensual sheen and elegance made Leon even more nervous. "Now, let's get started," Rose said resolutely. Leon froze, his mind racing. He clenched his fists, trying to steady himself. "This is it," he thought. "I'm really going to be squeezed dry again tonight." Despite his nerves, he knew there was no escape. The next day, Leon awoke to find his daughters cheerfully playing with colorful cards. Their lively voices echoed through the room. "Mom and Dad look so wonderful in the photo. You're the perfect match." Leon was startled to see the photos from the previous day attached to the cards. One card had a strange phrase written on it. "May the silver light always shine in the eyes of the one you love." Both he and Rose stared at the card in stunned silence. Then they exchanged shocked glances before bursting into loud protests. "Who wrote this?" Rose demanded, her cheeks flushing red. "You must have misunderstood. We're not in love," Leon stammered, suddenly nervous. He started pacing in circles as if he had been bitten. This needs to be corrected, he muttered, his face mirroring Rose's embarrassment. While the two scrambled to figure out how to fix the misunderstanding, the card's message had already left an undeniable impression. Rose, still in her nightdress, stood with a sly grin playing on her lips. She said teasingly, "Where should we do it? On the balcony or in the living room?" Leon froze, his face a mix of confusion and mild panic. On the balcony? Not good, right? It would be embarrassing for others, Rose chuckled, shaking her head. All right then, the living room it is. Seems more appropriate, she said, holding up a piece of paper. Leon's curiosity piqued. All right, let's do it, he replied dramatically, flopping onto the sofa as though preparing for something monumental. He closed his eyes and sprawled out theatrically. Rose arched an eyebrow. What exactly are you doing, Leon? Leon cracked one eye open, puzzled. Huh. Aren't you talking about having sex?